everyone, and welcome to another edition of By the Numbers for CSGO, brought to you by Alphadraft. I am your host, Richard Lewis. With me, as always, every week, it is, of course, the world's leading CSGO analyst and big brother. It is Duncan Thorin Shields. I'm guessing this is a great and glorious day for you.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? It's one of those days you feel like the Hindu philosophy of karma maybe exists, you know, people getting their comeuppance. There's nothing better, Rich. I mean, everyone knows this in life. There's nothing better than when you have that boss or that teacher or that person in your community who's always like preaching one thing and they're always so smug and so holy and they always know better than you and they're always counseling. And then you find out they've fucked up massively. Like they've had an affair with someone or they've embezzled some money or they just slip over on a banana peel and then a dildo goes right up their ass and can't be retrieved. Whatever it might be, these things happen on a day-to-day basis.
I use that excuse when I go to the accident emergency room as well. So.
Nothing better than that, is it, though?
Well, look, before we get to the passion of the fREAKAZoiD, right? Before we get to that, okay, let's talk about what triggered this whole thing. So let's contextualize the drama. So, Simple, pretty good player from the Ukraine, known for being a bit difficult, shall we say. To frame it in your words, Duncan, I believe you would describe him as a piece of shit. I think, would that be fair?
I mean, that's a bit extreme. Here's the thing. In a sense, I would. As in a team context, he's almost as bad as he can get in terms of people who are going to be like just grating on their teammates and nothing's ever going to be his fault. And basically, here's the big problem with Simple is I'm sure a lot of the time he's bang on that someone did fuck up and they didn't do it right. But he also seems like the sort of person where I think the key gap in his perception as a team player is he will never understand that if someone else is worse than him, it might not be their fault all the time that they lost the round. Like the fact that they're worse than him doesn't mean that it's never his fault. Like he can do something wrong, obviously decision making, and that will be the. But that's where there seems to be a gap. I don't know that he ever bridged that gap. So as long as he's playing with someone worse than him, it's never going to be his fault. So it's true. He's a very contentious person, and even in these clips we're talking about. In fact, obviously, I hope we're going to talk about the other clip with the Luminosity player at some point. In both of these clips, he's obviously not just sat there like, "No, I respect you. Please do not trash talk me." He's just like, "Want to fight, motherfucker?" Just like pull out.
But here's the thing. I'll tell you. I understand Simple. I understand him. You know, I think me and him were probably a lot alike when I was a little bit younger. You know, I came from how should we say an industrious background, and I had obviously this prodigious talent. I'm not quite sure what it was at the time, but it was there. It was shapeless. It was formless. I had other people around me that wanted to take that talent and mold it and shape it, but I actually thought they were cretins a lot of the time. And I was probably
didn't understand your English.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, like, and I did have issues with authority from people I didn't respect. Like, if I respected you, I'd listen to you all day, you know, because like it's like, okay, this individual can improve me, they can make me better. But if I don't respect your fucking ability to do something, why the fuck would I let you teach me about how to do it? That was always my attitude. And equally as well, I know people might find this hard to believe. When I was younger, did have a bit of a temper, Duncan. Bit of a temper. Which obviously isn't like me now.
I mean, you've calmed down a lot over the years. You've become a lot milder.
Yeah. You know. And you know, Simple's boxed. You know, I've boxed. I think he's looking for a channel for some of that aggression. I get it all. I get the package. I understand it. Right.
Wait a minute. When you say a channel for some of the aggression, you make it sound like they should say Simple. Listen, that wasn't all your fault. You know, you actually, in the context, you did handle things fairly well, mate. You know, like you're staying well, but we realize, listen, this keeps happening. You know, you need some sort of a channel for this aggression to get this sort of like this energy out of you, mate. So they bring him into this room. This is going to be your room here, mate. And he opened the door and there's just a yak that's gagged. And they just goes, have at it, mate. Just fucking have at it.
It's really interesting, actually, because when this is a little bit perhaps serious for this show, and we'll get back to Simple in a minute, but there was I was always told the best thing to do is don't bottle your anger up inside. Never bottle it up inside. That if you are angry, you got to have a release. You got to have an outlet for it. My outlet was boxing, rugby, and you know, and I'm ashamed to say, when my self-control got the better of me at sometimes, yes, fighting, yes, fights had been had. Pointless acts of violence as a young man. A study came out just the other day, and it said in this study that actually releasing that anger is bad because it gives you a reward for the aggressive feelings and that endorphin release, that wonderful feeling when you're smashing in a punch bag or wrecking an opponent or whatever as you run through them and break a tackle. All of that rewards aggression, and therefore you're more likely to become aggressive. So actually, what they're saying now, scientifically, it's better to bottle it up. It's actually better to bottle it up. Okay. You won't explode. You won't keel over and have a heart attack. But you may not become a violent maniac. So anyway, I see Simple as someone who, much like myself as a young kid, I think Counterstrike can be a very good release. In fact, if you look at all the stars we've got in our game, a lot of them are people that had to stop sport for an injury. Olafmeister, for example, people who have been involved in martial disciplines. If Carmack were here, I'm sure he'd tell you about his judo championships, but I was thinking more Pasha. And it's actually because it's such an aggressive and direct game and uses so many different parts of your brain, and obviously there's a reactive element to it. You do need to be, there has to be an element of physical excellence to what you do. I think it can be a very good release for people. So Simple to me makes total sense. I don't consider him an enigma. I just consider him to be, again, a working class young guy who's a little bit aggressive and looking for a channel for that aggression.
Well, especially the part that you said, like one thing I do want to make a point of is I can definitely relate to the part that you said about the notion of unless someone, like you won't automatically respect someone. Like the one area that I was trying to point out basically there, when I was saying if you're worse than Simple, then you will always be the one who made the mistake, is because Simple obviously is someone who prides himself on how good he is. So as a result, you have to be better than him to earn his respect. Well, unless you're just very nice to him, I imagine that probably works as well. But the idea is if you're not as good as him, not as skilled as him, and then you're in any way contentious to him, he's just going to fuck you up. Like there's no way he's going to be like, oh, I'll give this guy a second. Because so to him, he prides himself on the fact that he's so good. Therefore, you better be good as well if you want to like get his respect to some degree. And so I can definitely relate to that. That was actually one of my problems in the early days of the esports industry. Even though a lot of people were massive cunts to me, which is often why I would like respond in kind, it has to be said, if someone was someone where I thought they were only in that position because they were like just popular, or they just kind of like played the crowd, or like they were kind of a pleb, they weren't that skilled at what they did. If that person then in any way belittled me or anything, that would wreck that person. I'd be like, fuck this person. Like I actually am way better than this guy, and like no reason to respect the person. So it is a bit extreme. Obviously, you do want to mellow out a little bit from that and be able to accommodate people, but I can understand where he's coming from in that position. Whereas it seems like a lot of people don't actually on Reddit. That's what's weird.
And I also want to say, and this applies to the Brazilians when we're talking about the Taco specifically, and the manager from Luminosity, Dead. People like laugh when you say things like, oh, working class or whatever. People don't understand there are very different cultural approaches to conflict resolution. All right. And I consider, where I grew up in Wales, and Sam can attest to this. He's from our producer's from the same show, same town. So he's in the background now doing the show. He's from the same town as me. And when I grew up in the Northeast as well, conflict resolution was pretty much, do you want to fucking fight about it, mate? Right? And that was it. Like, if you had the courage of your convictions at some point, there was going to have to be some sort of verbal altercation where violence was intimated, and then it would be, would the conflict escalate or would someone back down? That was pretty much how I resolved a lot of my problems. It would just be like, I'm a big guy. All right, then fuck it. Yeah, let's go outside. And then the other guy go, nah, you're all right, mate. And that'd be it. Problem solved, right? I've won that round. And I know when there are other cultures out there, and I'm a well-traveled guy, that do have a different approach to conflict resolution, to what we might consider civilized and normal and rational in the West. I know Eastern Europeans are like this. I've talked to a lot of Eastern Europeans. You've talked to a lot of Eastern Europeans and Russians as well. They will very openly say, this is how we would deal with this problem. And it may involve somebody, being involved in an altercation of sorts. And it's the same with Brazil. These are cultures where I wouldn't describe them as inherently violent cultures, but I would say their attitude towards resolving conflicts can occasionally involve there's like a tier what's good and what's bad and what would require violence. Whereas we've moved towards, in the last 50 years or so, we've moved towards becoming a culture where we say violence is never acceptable. And that is obviously, I'm like yourself. I certainly think within an esports context, at least, that there should never be any cause for violence.
Here's the example for what you just said there, Richard. When that whole scenario went down with you and Lode in Dota 2, someone, I think it was Lode himself, made the comment on Twitter, like, violence has no place in esports. And I'm pretty sure in saying that, he didn't think he was imparting some great wisdom. He was trying to be quite glib, right? Like, well, we can all agree that violence has... And what happened was this guy called Vilat, who's like a head Dota 2 guy at Starladder, when the comment was, violence should not exist in esports, Vilat just replied on Twitter, it should. And this guy's from Ukraine, and he wasn't saying, by the way, like, violence is always the right answer, I will be violent to you. He was just implying, like, no, it has its place. And the point there is he's not a massively ignorant person. That's just their culture.
Yeah. Now, again, to place this, because it's all been a bit serious, Duncan, and perhaps this wasn't what people are expecting. The crowd's gathering. We are going to get to the jokes. We're going to get to the fun stuff. But I think it's important that we try and frame this in a socio-anthropological context almost, because...
Even that word is incredibly boring, I'm afraid, Richard. You sucked all the fun out of the room with that term right there.
Well, again, look, the point I'm trying to hammer home is that this is a global game, okay? We're all coming towards each other from very different areas of life, with very different life experiences, different ages, different cultures, different nationalities, different languages, all of which can create ultimately conflict, and conflict that can't be resolved. And I'll give you another example of just how something that makes no sense to us can actually be a part of everyday life. I've obviously got a lot of Greek friends, and I read a lot about Greek history, Greek culture, spent a lot of time out in Greece, speak a little bit of Greek. I've got a lot of love for Greek people. And there's a very small mountain village in Crete where they have this tradition, and it's just what they do. So what happens is, if somebody new moves into the village for whatever reason, they immediately go to their farm. They're all typically agricultural settlements, and they steal a sheep or a piece of cattle. They rustle it away, steal it, and then the neighbor comes out and goes, "Fuck, where's my sheep?" I don't know, fox got it. I'm not a farmer. Do fox do that? I don't know. Something bigger than a fox, maybe. What's happened? And they go.
So what you're saying is, in real life, foxes kill things. Keep going.
Edgy, right? So so the neighbor goes to the other neighbor and says, "Have you seen my sheep?" And he goes, "Yeah, I stole it, mate. Here you go. Nice to meet you." And that's how they break the ice. That's how they introduce each other. Anyone disputing this fact, I would urge you to go out and read a book called The Poetics of Manhood, Life in a Cretan Mountain Village.
I don't imagine they're going to, if I'm being honest. Rich.
Well, I know this has turned into an episode of QI with me as Stephen Fry at the moment. But like, this is again, the point I'm trying to make is, we consider stealing wrong. Like, you would never do that. I would never take your iPod, and when you go, "Oh, mate, I was here yesterday. Have you seen an iPod?" And I'd go, "Yeah, mate, I fucking stole it. Can we be friends now?" You would think I was a fucking absolute lunatic, wouldn't you? So I'm just trying to say, we should be a bit respectful of people's different approaches to things. So, with that said, Simple was playing a game in FPL, the Face It Pro League, and there's been a bit of back and forth, I believe, prior to this game. Just a few things where I think Simple might have intimated that Taco's not a very good player. I think the entire community's guilty of that, by the way. I don't see why Simple should be excluded from being able to observe Taco as the weakest player statistically in his team. We say it. We sit here every week and say it. So why can't Simple? Anyway, Simple says that. Then in a round that Simple's clutched a 1v2, he jumps around a corner and knifes Taco. Taco gets very upset by this, and then it types, you mad? Because I'm not, in block capitals, which may as well have been him holding up a placard saying, "I am incredibly mad right now." That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever fucking seen anyone do, to try and make out, "Haha, look how not angry I am." Like, yeah, you're fucking boiling, mate. You're fucking absolutely furious. So anyway, they start having a back and forth, and this is being fueled by Stewie2K. And then Taco attacks Simple and says he's got fucking mental problems, which arguably might be a step too far. I don't actually think it is, but a lot of people are saying it is.
Here's one thing I will say about that, though, Rich,
Yeah.
is that, again, one of the problems you have to realize is these are people who don't have fantastic English. So there's a famous example in League of Legends, right, where once Ocelot was claimed to have called someone who was gay mentally ill for being gay, whereas actually, if you even looked at the way he phrased the words and you asked him after the fact, first of all, he meant like a full stop to be halfway through the sentence that people didn't take because it was spoken, and then secondly, he meant mentally ill, as in that guy had actually admitted himself multiple times that he had depression or whatever. So it was my point here is, when I think back on this comment, it sounds so outrageous at first to say, like, are you mentally ill or whatever, or you are mentally ill, but I actually will give Taco a small out. I think that could be a shit English version of trying to say, like, you obviously have something wrong with you mentally in as much as you're, like, toxic with teammates and you're always getting kicked off. I could see that being, like, a shit way of phrasing that, okay? Maybe he wasn't literally like, you have bipolar disorder or whatever, you know?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't even think necessarily that would be the worst thing you could say about anyone. I remember our good friend Slasher, the journalist who now works at ESPN, he used to tell people I was bipolar privately behind the scenes, and that people shouldn't interact with me or deal with me because I'm bipolar. I'm too crazy to be trustworthy when dealing with a story or in a professional capacity, which was nice of him. Nice of him to do that, obviously. But I don't necessarily think that's the worst thing you can do to someone.
It's pretty
yeah, it is. It is like, oh, you're fucking mentally ill. You know, like, obviously it's not good, is it? You know, right? But I'm just saying, like, you know, I can think of worse things to say. Again, it's like the point you made on Twitter, where you said, look, if you call somebody autistic and they are autistic, you're attacking them. If you say, are you autistic? And of course, and you know they're not, it's kind of framed slightly different. And I don't want to move into the realm of social justice warrior ableist language where you can't call someone, I don't know, where they want to ban the word retard, for example. And so, like, I don't think we should necessarily. I'm happy that word is now just moved along and now means stupid.
No, I mean, my point with that was just that the whole point. Here's one of the things that that does trigger me online, where people will get offended over things that logically couldn't even make sense that it would offend them. Because here's the thing. Most of the time, they interpret something literally and get offended and say that person is calling that person a retard or he is being racist. Yet, by logic, they are then claiming you didn't make a joke. And yet, if it's obvious that it was meant to be a joke, it can't have been a literal statement. And the inherent humor in the joke goes like this. You are not this thing, but by saying you are this thing, there is a gap between perception and reality. Therefore, there's the joke. If you actually were retarded and someone said you're a retard, that would not be a joke, nor would the person intend it as a joke. So I think it's really dishonest and disingenuous when people try to do that. You know, they try to make out like you really were meaning the full extent of that, because obviously you wouldn't be. It's the same as if you do say, here's a very contentious point. Okay, Rich. So you're not allowed nowadays to joke about someone being gay. Even though I guess we actually do get away with it a lot in modern culture. But in theory, you're not supposed to joke about that, because obviously it would be a terrible thing if that person was gay and you knew they were gay and you were using that to make fun of them. That would be a horrible thing to do. But the whole implicit conceit of the joke is that you know he's not gay. That's why it's a joke that you're saying it. I just want to make that small point because people go out of their way to avoid that context, it feels like.
Yeah, and this is the key thing. You know, I find it very weird when things get labeled as racist or homophobic, transphobic, sexist, misogynist, whatever it is. If you're not looking at the specific context, like, I'm a big believer in what George Carlin always said, that, you know, words aren't racist. And he do some very edgy jokes about it, which I'm definitely not going to repeat. But you should Google George Carlin on Richard Pryor. That pretty much sums up my feelings towards the way language is being kind of almost weaponized when it's in its benign form. You know, and we're turning it into something malignant when it doesn't have to be. We're making phantom hate speech. You know, me and you joking, and should be sacrosanct. We get to dictate the level of appropriateness between both of us. And if someone overheard that conversation, I don't think they're going to chime in and go, "Excuse me, that conversation you were having, I found that incredibly offensive." Well, fuck off then. don't listen to it, right? That's the only sensible and rational answer. But unfortunately, in esports especially, we have a propensity for drama. We love the drama. That's what we actually love, and that's why we're here now. So back to Taco and the knifing. Taco keeps pushing Simple's buttons, and obviously Simple retaliates, which he's not going to exercise a great degree of self-control. Although I must say that the goading that Americans have engaged in towards Simple in FPL is repellent. Every game, someone's trying to goad him into a response now. And the Brazilians definitely took advantage of this. And we'll talk about that broader point in a second. But yes, so Taco goes out. And then, of course, the Brazilians, again, culturally, they're very big on this idea of brotherhood, very big on this idea of, hey, your friend's fight is your fight.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cultures where, you might have someone come in and, for example, we've all got that mate that's come in and gone, calm down, calm down. Like, it's not all fight. We've all had a drink, right? And we'll have friends around us who think the best option is let's try and de-escalate. That's a very British and American thing, I would say. And in some cultures, not so much. It's just like, what? This guy says he's going to fuck you up. Let's go fuck him up together, unquestioningly, unflinchingly. The brotherhood. Right, and obviously we know how deep the feeling in Luminosity is towards each other. They've achieved a hell of a lot this last year, and if you don't have that level of brotherhood, if you don't have that feeling of fraternity, it's going to be very hard to accomplish what they've accomplished. We know Fallen is like this fatherly figure that's basically dragged them kicking and screaming, reluctant to make roster changes, did it anyway. Did it in amazing circumstances, or everyone who is in this kind of Brazilian scene orbit feels very close. You saw this with Games Academy being coached effectively by Luminosity to beat these American teams that Luminosity had so much joy over. They are one unit. And naturally, I think when one of that unit is being what they perceive to be threatened, they were wrong. They were wrong. He wasn't under any threat whatsoever. It was just shit talk. I understand why they immediately leapt to the defense of Taco.
Here's the thing as well, right? Okay, I'm not that sort of person. And in general, my friends and the people that I know, I mean, in my area, I guess people are more like that, where they will just have a scrap or whatever. But in general, the people I'm friends with don't tend to be people like that. I tend to be friends with people who, on some sort of intellectual level, will actually question even what their friends did. And, is that something I'm really behind? And just pick the moments when you are. But I can see the appeal of that, certainly. Like, I think we can all know people in real life where usually the person themselves is a bit crazy, right? They are a bit unhinged. They are a bit off the wall. They're the friend where actually you're friends with them, but sometimes you wonder if you should be, because they're the one who always gets you into trouble, is always doing crazy shit and always starting fights. But the one area that you always love that person is because they are the person where if you got in trouble, they wouldn't even need the explanation. They'd just be like, they'd jump in there. They'd be like, we're going to war together. It's fucked up in a way, because it can, obviously, as in this case, it can be directed in a negative manner, but you will have a great affection for that person because they seem incredibly loyal. And it's just, there's something beautiful when someone is just like unquestioningly on your side. That is cool. But unfortunately, like I say, it can obviously be directed towards an end that isn't so great, like this, where it was just a pile on.
Yeah, and look, it was again, I can identify with this because I was in that situation, obviously, at DreamHack Winter, where something had happened, and the incident between me and Loader had really coloured the whole event. Must say it was still wonderful of DreamHack to include me in their promotional material. How very kind of them. After effectively destroying my reputation at the end of 2015, and you remember, I came and apologized to everyone involved, all of the talent, and said I felt a little bit ashamed of losing my rag, and I didn't want it to color the view of my colleagues, because that felt like the right thing to do. It had put everyone in a weird situation. And it was a situation that, I think there's so many get off the ride points, if you look at the ridiculous sort of way it escalated, there were a lot of like get off now and nothing, but fuck it, you're not thinking, you don't think it can actually lead to the worst case scenario until it does. but yeah, so I agree with you. I think I wouldn't blindly follow a friend into doing something ridiculous. But again, these are cultural differences.
I mean, here's the thing, okay?
And you're right, intellectual differences.
I'll even give you an example, okay? Now, I think knowing this person well enough, he won't be mad that I say this, because he himself would say this is part of his culture. This is actually one of the things, believe it or not, that I love about Yanko.
Yeah.
So Yanko's the guy who's only just gotten into the scene with us. He obviously comes from Serbia, which is quite a different culture than the one we're part of. Yep. One of the great things about Yanko is I can say unquestionably he is one of these guys. Like, if someone fucked with one of us at the event, Yanko would be down to fucking ride or die, even if he didn't know the details. Like, here's what's great about Yanko. Yanko's the guy where you can be talking all kinds of reckless shit, because he got the strap and he's willing to let that shit go without a care in the world, motherfucker. So you're like, he's like, get him, and you're talking even more bad shit, more buku shit, because he's been the back there, big Yanko.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. This is why I actually love Yanko, and he's been such a great addition to the scene because he is, again, on an intellectual level, very intelligent man. But he again, there is. Obviously, we all know the environment that happened in the former Yugoslavia. We all know, the kind of atrocities that went on there. We all know how it was resolved by the West, and I can't even begin to imagine what it's like to grow up in effectively a war zone, and to sort of deal with the aftermath of that. And I went to Serbia for the World Championship. Wasn't a great event, but the people there were awesome. Belgrade was awesome. I remember talking about it with Yanko at that event, saying one of the worst things about that event being so shitty is it casts bad aspersions on Serbia, when it was nothing to do with Serbia or Serbian infrastructure and everything to do with the incompetence of the organizers. But yes, you're absolutely right. Yanko is one of those people, and it's good to know that he's there, I think, at times. Yeah. Definitely. Anyway, so I understand why the Brazilian guys felt they had to go off. I think Fair maybe went a bit too far in that deleted tweet when he basically said, let's see, he basically was going mob deep on him. We'll see you at LAN, you shook. Yeah.
Cowards like you get your whole body laced up. Exactly. I've got to say, Richard, let me just stop 1 second, though. One thing I want to say when we discuss this whole topic, notice we're being very reasonable here, trying to understand people's fucking cultures.
Yeah.
Fuck all the Brazilian fans. Just stop right there. End the show right now. Now, the key thing is, Richard, that as a comma, all the Brazilian fans who tried to talk to dispel everything that was said as like none of it was at all serious. Like, here's the thing, as you're going to get to later, the stuff that the manager said, okay, actually looking into that is some sort of like an idiom or something, and he didn't outright say he was going to kill someone, whatever. But the thing that first said, if you go and look at the deleted tweet, was along the lines of like, and it was, the gist of it was like, anyone, like, you can talk it online or something, but like in Brazil, we would see you at LAN, basically. It was essentially those sorts of lines. Now, he was not, as some people have tried to suggest, Richard, implying that what they do in Brazil is you don't just say shit online, you then have to win the LAN match. That was definitely not what he was implying. No. The obvious overt implication was, I'm good with the mouse, I'm real good with the hands too, motherfucker. So
yeah. But look, how many times in a different world, okay, before this level of glitz, glamour, scrutiny that we find ourselves in this modern age of esports, how many times do we know and have we seen players basically in Counterstrike threaten each other? In the UK scene, it was a regular occurrence.
It used to be a famous thing in the UK scene to say, see you at LAN, and not even be joking. Actually mean like, I'm going to try and fuck you up if I can.
Yeah. The amount of times, people tried to attack me for things I'd written was unbelievable. Like, not just coming up and saying, mate, why did you write that? Like, literally, want to fight about it? Like that guy out of Family Guy. Like, you just fucked. Like, it just, oh, really? And there'd be like 5 people there, like, all wanting to take you outside because you said their team wasn't going to get out of groups at a fucking I-Series. The level of hostility was unbelievable. And I remember one LAN. And again, these are the stories no one remembers. I don't mind telling these stories now. I feel like we've ascended and we've put all that bad stuff behind us. But there was this group of Irish players that hated me with a passion because when we did a Nations Cup, a domestic Nations Cup, England, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, all of that, an English guy, and a pretty much obvious English guy, got the captaincy of the Republic of Ireland team. And I simply said in passing when writing a review of this event, I said, it's actually better for the Republic of Ireland if they don't use Irish players because the Irish players are garbage. That's what I said. And it's true. It was a true observation. But there was this one Irish team called Anomaly. They were very good in like enemy down. They were like a top 10 UK team. That used to mean something in Source, actually. And anyway, they ever since I said that, without a fucking... They didn't miss a beat. Every day there was a way to flame me. They'd be on our IRC channels. They would say all this ridiculous shit. You know, if I see you at LAN, I'm going to kick you in the face. That was one threat I got. Then what happened was my mother got ill. She had an illness, like a type of it was turned out to be benign, thankfully, benign type of cancer. And I mentioned this to some people in the scene, some friends, and it had got back to these guys, and they tagged up in games something like, you know, I used to be called Gonzo back then. Gonzo's mother dying of cancer, Gonzo's mother will be dead. They all had names that were a variant of this. And they played an entire game like that. So the following LAN, I felt that was a little bit of a step too far. Thought that was maybe going a little bit too much. So at LAN, they were playing a game, and I just came like a bull out of a fucking china shop, kicked one of the guys out of the chair in the middle of a match and was just like, all five of you, let's fucking go. Security had to intervene. It was a ridiculous scene. And in the end, again, de-escalated, all apologized. No one really wanted to fight, and it was all a bit silly. But that was pretty much like one of the very first UK LANs I went to. I mean, I had a fucking job at that point. I was a representative for a company. I went absolutely fucking crazy. And again, this was commonplace. No one really blinked. We didn't even get thrown out. I literally interrupted a match trying to start a fight with 5 people. No problem. Carry on. So UK LANs were fucking hairy as fuck. And 1.6, there's famous examples. People forget. Spawn used to fucking walk around like he was Tupac. He used to fucking threaten to light people up all the time.
I mean, he wasn't like, first of all, fuck it, Fnatic and the click you clip. I mean, obviously, we mean people who fucked him, yeah.
Yeah, but I think there's some fucking clips on YouTube of him pretty much saying, like, you know, if I see these guys, I'm going to body them type thing. Like, unbelievable. Like, he brought a level of gangstery that had never been seen in 1.6 before. You know, Swedes weren't ready for that. But he again changed the culture. And I know you know. Do you remember the Na'Vi game between Na'Vi and SK when Na'Vi kicked the PCs?
Yeah.
That got pretty fucking tasty. I was there. I watched it. So... Just saying, I think there has been an undercurrent of violence because when you're competing and your adrenaline's high, and these people have basically got all this stuff. Like, okay, when you're on the safety of the internet and you can trash talk people nonstop, the reason that works is you're never going to see each other in real life. But that's not going to work in a competitive scene because you are going to see each other in real life. You're going to see each other in real life frequently. You know, on a circuit. So you are going to meet up. And then when things start going wrong in the game and your adrenaline's high, you can understand, like, people will go up and do stuff. Again, Steel will tell you how one player, even after a game, during a handshake, pushed his fucking nails. I don't know why he has nails, but he pushed his nails into, like, Steel's hand while they were doing the handshake afterwards, like, and drew blood. So it's insane. But I've been trying to explain to people, even in Cluj, we said a player came up to me and was, you know, saying that he was going to beat me up and stuff. It's there. It's a very real thing. So then, Dead, the manager for Luminosity, he tweeted, you know, I'm trying to remember the exact wording because it's important. But I think it was like, if you speak harsh, to paraphrase, if you speak harsh words, you will eat a bullet in Brazil. I
think it said like bite the bullet or something.
Yeah. Now, I think this is, first of all, a commentary on some of the crime problems in Brazil, okay, which I don't. You're like, where's this
Okay.
going, Richard? I don't think he's specifically saying I'm going to shoot you. I think he's just saying if you were to run your mouth in Brazil, there's perhaps a chance that it might catch you.
It could have been
a Portuguese guy
Yeah.
messaged me and said it's actually an idiom.
Yeah.
And what it is the bullet eats you. The bullet eats you, meaning that there's consequences for your actions. It's just something we say culturally. And you said you were looking at Brazilian idioms. Did you find this idiom?
Yeah, it was something similar. I didn't know that's what it meant. I assumed it was like the British idiom, bite the bullet, as in like you're going to have to do something hard and you can do it.
Yeah.
So I assume it. Here's the thing. I think it was similar to the fur one. I don't think you can excuse it all away using just like fucking sophistry and be like, well, it wasn't quite that. No. All of these comments had an underlying message of, we are going to fuck you up in some way. It's just that he wasn't saying, I will shoot you with a piece of fucking ammunition, which obviously is what people initially assumed when they translated it and would be utterly outrageous to say you will actually put a bullet in someone. But the underlying implication and reason for saying the comment is sort of like, you keep talking shit, something's going to happen to you. It's something like that, It's purposely supposed to be vague. And the problem here is it was translated so literally, it became something very, very, very realistic and looked like he was saying he was going to kill him.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a death threat at all. I think to describe it as a death threat is way over. That is like a new level of reading into something and drama. And the community are like, oh well, he said death threats, and that isn't what happened. A death threat, they're very easy to identify. They usually take the form of I will kill you next time I see you. That's generally the structure of a death threat. That isn't what happened here.
I'm totally in favor of the idea that we have to know what this guy's interpretation of that phrase was, especially because it was in another language, remember, and we just Google translated it. It's not like we had someone from Portugal tell us what it meant. But the problem is, I'm totally in favor of that. I just want to make this point. I'm willing to understand what it means and go, okay, now I'm going to retcon what I thought that said. Problem is, the community's totally two-faced on this matter. Because when they're Portuguese or Brazilians and they have this team that they like who says this, they go, no, that's not what he meant. That's not what he meant. When I say something, they tell me what my interpretation was. No, what you meant was this. Well, no, I didn't actually. Trying to get out of it, like that sort of thing. So it's got to be the same both ways, guys. So the same way as I agree. Other people have to be reasonable.
And this is where I guess we start to steer out of basically the bus now. We're drivers on a bus, Thorin, and we've been parked in reasonable town where everything's balanced and fair. Next stop, Cuntsville, right? That's happening.
Pull the short yellow bus up. All the Brazilians get on.
And away we go. Because I think you're right. There's been a massive disparity in how this was handled. Now, I had an inside source on this. I was looking into it. I was going to write an op-ed about it all, just to give my views, which may or may not be redundant after this show. But I did some research, and apparently all of the people who tweeted, Satako, Dead Fur, all of the people that created the drama for Luminosity, they were fined $2,000 by their organization. And they've just kept it private. I don't know why they would keep it private. I think it would be a good move if you were to publicly state that, because what's the point in taking sanctions against your players to kind of appease the community and then you don't tell the community about it? Seems a bit weird. But I also think maybe they're thinking it could be, no pun intended, used as ammunition against them. So perhaps they're a little bit worried about that for future drama arising from it. But yeah.
Also, Richard, I want to be very fair to these Brazilian players. Like, you have to understand their cultural background, okay? So here's the thing. Do you remember the movie Braveheart? Now, in the movie Braveheart, yes. There's a fantastic character, one of the best villains ever played, which is the guy who's the king. Yep. And he has a great line at one point in time where he says, like, they say something like, they say like, sir, shall we use the archers? And he goes, arrows cost money. Send in the Irish. So don't really think that Brazilian CSGO players are going to go wasting good ammunition on just any old one, okay? Those bullets cost money. They're not going to settle things by shooting someone first and foremost. That's going to be a last resort. Be fair.
That's almost echoing Chris Rock's piece on bullet control.
Yeah. Layaway.
Yeah, like get him on layaway. But yeah, so I thought it was really strange because the community, while they did get on the Brazilians' backs a little bit, Simple still caught some flack. And we've kind of let the Brazilians off, haven't we? Okay, and by that I mean we now get into a whole new situation with our friend fREAKAZOiD. Now, I've known Ryan many years. Obviously, he was a Source player before.
Oh, can I just say one last thing as well?
Yeah,
I was just thinking of this, actually, when you were talking about the cultural background thing. There's also one other piece of information I have. People love it, Richard, when I go deep on a theory, when I go on a tangent. And
everyone loves it when you go deep. That's what my wife tells me.
You went socio-anthropological. I'm going to go biological.
Ooh,
now, that
dangerous.
doesn't mean I'm going to kill out all the Brazilians using special virus that I've developed. That's already happening anyway. No, what I'm actually going to edgy enough, Richard. No, what I'm actually going to do, Richard, is I'm going to explain to you. I happen to know something about Brazil, which is there's this thing in the world called toxoplasmosis, and you can look this up online. It's a virus that's caused by some sort of like parasite or something, and it's generally spread around by stuff like cats, right? So one of the interesting things about it is you'll be shocked if you ever look this up, because when someone told me this, I thought this is bullshit, and I looked it up. On Wikipedia, you will find it says supposedly half of the world's population has this toxoplasmosis, because in most people it doesn't show any symptoms and you won't really know that you have it, and it won't have any mega negative effect on your life. So you'll be carrying it in some low level form, but it won't have any effect. Now, with that said, Rich, that sounds shocking in itself. Half the world's population. Yeah, to be fair, guys, we're talking about the half the world's population in the shit countries that have no like water and hygiene and stuff. So with that said, half the world's population is a lot. Then if you look, certain countries, and famously Brazil was one that was mentioned, have like something like 90% of people have this toxoplasmosis. And often it comes, for example, from cats, like especially if there's cats that are wild cats and they're going around. So you can imagine some of the poor areas in Brazil, this would be the case. There's a lot of stray animals going around. So the problem is, the way I found out about it was actually from watching Joe Rogan's podcast, where he himself had discovered this. And he said that he'd read an article that said toxoplasmosis, one of the ways it exhibited in people, and they found out that so many people had it, was that some people, it would make them have like more aggressive tendencies in life. Like it would make them be more risk takers. They'd have like more bravado. And so obviously you think of the great culture in Brazil of like fighting sports and being very aggressive in sports that they play. And so he was saying that one of the ways they'd found out that a lot of people had it was when they'd started like checking people who died in like motorcycle accidents, they'd find that a lot of these people had it. And that's maybe why they were like more risk taking and stuff. So in general, what I'm saying, guys, is it's not Taco's fault. Maybe like nearly all Brazilian people, he has toxoplasmosis or tacoplasmosis. There we go. It's all there, Rich.
I knew you were going to say that as well. That's the worrying thing. That's the worrying thing. So it's good. Perhaps tacoplasmosis, when we do verify its existence, they'll name it after you. I've always said there's a disease out there with your name on it. I've said that for years. But anyway, back to the next chapter. This is the good part. I told you, bus is pulling into Cuntsville. Now, fREAKAZOiD, for some reason, decides, I'm guessing because of Stewie2K. I suppose maybe I shouldn't let Stewie2K off the hook. Just to qualify this, Stewie2K was proven on a VOD that he deleted, but it had been backed up on another Twitch VOD service. He was really, really goading, Simple and Taco, basically goading him in going harder at Simple. Kind of again sat there like that little fucking gremlin that sits on Jabba the Hutt, like like just doing that, right? In Return of the Jedi, and he said some patently absurd things. That it's hard to believe the level of cognitive dissonance required to say them. And he was saying like, I learned to be humble, man. Stewie2K, is this fucking real life?
Oh, a great line he had, Richard, was, this is actually before the part in the round where Taco got knifed by Simple. Simple kills Stewie short on cash towards the A side. Stewie on his stream says, like to see him do that in a match. It's like, you are one of the biggest onliners ever who's just started his pro career and has been shit at the first LAN. Why are you trying to shot on someone who's a rising talent, same age as you, way better? Like, in what universe do you 2K? Bear in mind, you weren't saying it too simple. Like, he didn't hear you say this. You were saying it to yourself on stream. So you actually believe this inside your own mind, mate. I'd love to have a movie, Rich. You know, no spoilers, but you know the movie Ex Machina, where this guy gets called off to a secret location and his job is to check out a new highly advanced artificial intelligence and check if it's really human and if he can believe it. I want a movie where I fly off to a secret location that Cloud9 have, and they say, like, we got this new high-level artificial intelligence. I'm like, what is it called? Stewie 2K. I'm like, oh my God, sounds so futuristic. Then I have to interact with him and see whether he actually is a human that has like a human's brain and perception of the world, because I don't know yet whether he'd pass the Turing test. Although really he is a good-looking guy, so he'd pass another of Turing's tests.
I was going to say that the worrying undertone, unfortunately, about Ex Machina is that there's a fucking massive sexual undercurrent in it. So please, Duncan, please be gentle, all right? Okay. But anyway... So yeah, again, this level of cognitive dissonance, this guy is basically lecturing, again, trying to big brother, which is ironic because Stewie 2K is the littlest of little brothers, especially if we contextualize him within the scene. You've got no pro career experience to fall back on and lecture anyone about. So whatever you want to say about Simple, and yes, it's been a checkered past. Yes, he's made mistakes. Yes, he's been on teams for short periods of time. This is the start of your pro career. This is step one on the journey of life. You don't get to talk to anyone. That's fucking unbelievable. You can't lecture anyone. You've not earned that right yet. So it's obvious Simple would be dismissive towards him. But then to say, I used to be arrogant, but I've humbled myself up while simultaneously lecturing someone.
Maybe he's read like a new ebook written by Red Eye. In-joke, guys. It's just an in-joke. Maybe this is a new 72-page ebook.
Oh, mate. Oh, that's a good one. That's just for us.
Something that's just for us. It's just for us, guys.
So yeah, maybe he has. If you're gonna learn, I always say learn from the best, right? So yeah, so Stewie's fucking adding fuel to the fire, like a little fucking bitch for no reason. It just makes no sense. So now, okay, and you described him in your video today as an enforcer. FREAKAZoiD obviously is a teammate of Stewie 2K. I think this is what's prompted it. That, you know, the community have got a very negative feeling towards Stewie 2K. Because of what Stewie 2K did. But I think perhaps FREAKAZoid's thinking, well, if this problem was Simple and never happened, Stewie 2K, my teammate, wouldn't be catching any heat. So, as you rightly pointed out, he wasn't in this game that they were playing in FPL. And I think that's absolutely key, by the way. You've got no reason to turn up and shit talk. You have to go out of your way to do it. You're not happening to bump into him on the fucking fields of justice, right? You are making a concerted effort to go out and have a confrontation with him. So he logs into Stewie 2K's account, he goes onto the fucking server, and he just starts berating Simple. And berating him and what I must say is incredibly childish levels of insult. You know, not even good burns particularly. Stuff that's either patently not true, like Simple, your aim is bad, absolutely ridiculous. You know, it doesn't even matter.
It's not even good trash talk, is it?
Yeah.
It's like saying to some guy it's like going up to John Holmes. Again, reference came incredibly on point. John Holmes was a famous porn star who had a massive dick. It's like going up to John Holmes, who you have actually seen in movies with a massive dick, and going, small dick motherfucker. You can't even perform in bed. Be like, it wouldn't even be good trash talk, would it?
But then again, I mean, Holmes did have to go gay for pay and died of AIDS. So, you know, it's not all... It's not all good, is it? The life of John Holmes isn't all good. And, of course, was involved in that botched drug heist, which was detailed in Wonderland with Val Kilmer in it.
Yeah, good movie.
So, yeah, an underrated movie. So there you go. Go out and check out Wonderland, or just John Holmes' work if you're into that sort of thing. He's got something...
a lot of stuff, as Richard said.
Yes, his career has something for everyone.
It turns me on more knowing he was only doing it for pay.
Yeah,
I like that.
No, the level of mental discipline, if you're not biologically determined to be gay and to do gay for pay, is outstanding.
I mean, to be fair, we're talking about cultural appreciating people's different cultures. I have actually met some Americans who explained to me it's actually a choice. So maybe he just chose to be gay.
Well, let's not get into that. And I know which Americans you're talking about. Let's not throw anyone under the bus. But anyway, yeah, so I'm a big fan of John Holmes. And you're right. If you go up to John Holmes and say you've got a small dick, I mean, there's just no way that insult would ever register with a man who had a 12-inch penis. There's just no way. So he's doing all this. And then I think this is where it starts to become a little bit cruel. A little bit cruel, not needlessly cruel, not savagely cruel, just a little bit cruel. Start saying, have you got any real life friends? And again, I think it's worth observing. This is a young man who's left his home to pursue excellence in his athletic field, and has left friends and family behind. And that's tough for anyone to do. I mean, that's tough. When I was traveling every weekend to do events, put strain on your friendships, on your relationships, and of course it can be quite lonely if you're spending 4 days away from people that are in your kind of support network in your life. Anders knows this as well. Obviously, got a partner and a child, and is trying to marshal bringing them along to events just so we can spend some time, because these are the good years with your kid. So it's a big deal even for older people, not just people at the fag end of their teens, cigarette end, I should say, of their teens. Must be careful with that word these days. So anyway, I think Freak ripping on him about that definitely leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And it's just really hard to see where it comes from. Now, what I think is interesting is the reaction to this immediately. Boom, it just blows up. It's been described on Reddit as bullying. Now, for me, I don't know if I agree with that, because for me, bullying is something that is sustained and persistent. And it has to be recurring. And there also has to be a genuine, you can't get away from it. I think these are qualifiers for bullying. So I don't know if I would describe it as bullying. It's certainly unpleasant. It's certainly abusive, but I wouldn't describe it as bullying necessarily. I mean, first of all, since labels are going to be so important for the debate moving forward, how do you describe it? Would you say it's bullying?
No, I would just say it's actually reasonably mild harassment. Like, as you say, first of all, let's not conflate bullying as in saying mean things to someone online with bullying in real life, where you're cornered and someone's like talking shit to you and they might punch your head in. Because in real life, if you had the option to click a little like a speaker icon and you could no longer hear what they were saying and they weren't there and you couldn't see them and nothing was happening, I don't think bullying would be that bad anymore. So in this scenario, Simple could have alt-tabbed after the round and literally fucking muted FREAKAZOiD on TeamSpeak, problem solved, or Mumble or whatever it was. So I agree. Also, the only part about this is dodgy to me is the fact that he wasn't in the game. If he was playing on Simple's team and he didn't like Simple talking shit, then to me, like I said in the video, shit talking I think is fine. Although I usually say you should only really talk shit to people who also talk shit back. Like, you shouldn't just do it to someone who, like, it might be bullying if you just constantly do it to someone who never talks to you and you're just being an arsehole. That's maybe going over the line a little bit, but still not that bad. And secondly, in terms of actual shit talking, as I kind of made the point, as long as it's stuff that is like real but not ridiculous. Like, it would obviously be ludicrous to be like, if your mum had actually died, to be like, that's why your mum died. That's obviously just horrible, isn't it? But if it's something like you're fat or whatever, I don't actually think that's that crazy as trash talk. I think you can do that.
One of the worst instances of trash talk I ever saw was in a Call of Duty 4 game. And there was this great sniper, Stevie, in there, whose mother did pass away. And of course, him being an iconic player, it was public knowledge. And he played a game where an opponent typed him literally in warm-up, haha, your mum is dead, to put him off his game. And that didn't blow up. That was considered, well, might have took that psychological warfare a bit too far there. Like,
no, it's obvious. Here's the thing. Let me just make this clarification, because it's a point I want to make in esports in general, because I see this come up a lot. Like, people will say, yeah, but Thorin, you make fun of people. How can you say that? Oh, no, don't get this wrong. I don't think what I'm doing is good there. I don't think that's a beneficial thing for the human race, and that in an ideal world, my most idealized self would say, I'm going to open Smith's asshole up and rip his fucking fibers apart. I don't think that's a great thing to say, but no. I do think it's funny. That's why I add some merit. And secondly, I know I'm being mean when I do that. Being mean is not the same as being like a bully, a racist, a misogynist. It's not any of these things. So don't get that wrong. Like, when there's a famous incident, okay, where I compared the owner of TSM to a monkey, and I didn't do it in a racist manner, but people took the fact that I was obviously insulting him as meaning that I was racist. No, I was trying to insult him. I was trying to make him feel bad that he is ugly and looked like a monkey. I wasn't trying to say he is not human, he is a subhuman, and his whole race are all I was definitely not doing that. So the point here is, don't conflate the two things. Like, I don't think it's really bullying to that big a degree, but he's obviously being an asshole.
Yeah.
I think he knows he was being an asshole. He's trying to be an asshole.
Yeah, well, that was the point
goal,
here.
right?
Wukong insults were a meme in League of Legends, and they were aimed at Reggie. And I don't think at any point they would be considered racist. I don't think that, especially given there's no etymological history there to support that people from that region being compared to, and this is the key point here. You've done yourself a disservice because you're saying you compared him to a monkey. Not true. You compared him to an anthropomorphized character, which was a conflation of human and
I also didn't even compare him. What I actually said was that his personality was like character
exactly, yes,
from the movie who happens to be an ape.
And this is the same thing. And Wukong is an anthropomorphized god, from the pantheon of I believe Chinese mythology. It might be Japanese, but anyway, certainly from that ballpark. It's not my expert field. So again, the fact that it's anthropomorphized, you're not saying, oh, he's a monkey, therefore he's inhuman. You're saying, hey, look, there is, or rather, the community was saying there is this passing resemblance to this character, which is a human and ape conflation. I don't particularly. I think it's a cheap jibe. I thought your jokes were working on a sort of mixed level, so at least there's two layers to it. But certainly, it was never a meme I particularly embraced or anything like that. But again, the idea that it's inherently racist is absurd. And this, you're right. I think what happens is when you're perceived to be mean-spirited, you're instantly all of the things that they want, that people want you to be.
It's like there's a track,
figure of hate.
The track goes like this. This person did something I don't like. Question, like flowchart, is he a piece of shit?
Yeah.
If he is a piece of shit at that point, there's no like yes, no. At that point it goes, he is a piece of shit, therefore probably a misogynist, probably a racist, probably the worst human who ever. And that's why you are literally Hitler in the end, like just because you said some mean things. So yeah, to go back to the original point, I think he was just being... Consider it's online and he isn't in someone's face, just mildly mean to someone.
Yeah, and
which is fine in its own way.
I think bullying as well, also a key component of bullying is you have to feel legitimately threatened, I think. You can't recuse yourself from the situation and there is a threat of, it can be violence or, I guess you can just feel bad that you can't remove yourself from the, persistent tirade of verbal abuse. Neither of those things are true here. I'm pretty sure Simple would feel more than comfortable if fREAKAZoid were in his face. Actually, I think he's one of the few players who wouldn't wilt and feel at all intimidated based on what I know about him. So certainly, I think bullying is massively overplaying it. But again, now fREAKAZoid, because he did that video famously calling out bullies, now he's been painted as a hypocrite because he said if you bully someone, then you're weak. Now, here's what I think. I've got a theory about this, a Columbo-style theory. Reference game incredibly on point. And that is that what fREAKAZoid thought he was doing, I think he felt that Simple was a bully. I think he thinks Simple is a bully because of his history of all the things he's done. And I think fREAKAZoid imagines him, and I'm going to call him Ryan. I know him. I think he believes that he is a destroyer of bullies. I imagine he's often took that big, like you say, that big brother role where it's like, hey, is someone giving you trouble? Hey, I'm your, it's like he's the jock friend of all the nerds in those 80s movies. The one cool jock who goes, don't worry, brah. I'll beat up Don DeLinger or whatever, like Revenge of the Nerds reference. But anyway, so the point is, like, I think that's what he thought he was doing in this instance. He was defending Stewie 2K's honor or something, or like showing his teammates, look, I'll be there for you. And as a result, he can't see how he can be perceived to be the bully. Because he's like, oh, I'm going to fuck Simple up. Simple's a bad guy. Simple's bullying everyone. Simple's being toxic and trash talking. I'm going to show him a thing or two. I'm going to teach him a lesson. And I think it paints him into that sort of tragic corner of becoming the thing you actually hate the most. And I'm pretty sure he's reflecting on that right now. Like, fucking holy shit, it does look like I was bullying this guy. It does look like I'm a hypocrite. And people, that label's going to stick now. Like, you've used the term meathead in your video. That might be appropriate. I've had conversations with Ryan. Yes, I've never disliked him. I think he's a good guy. He does talk like a self-help book, permanently, very glib quotes about how to improve your life. But that's fine. That's a philosophy he embraces.
Well, here's the problem. In a way, even though, by the way, I'm obviously saying that as an insult, it's an insult in as much as I think it's true, but there's also a side to that which I'm saying to then compliment him, which is as much as, okay, one of the reasons, why I like Joe Rogan's podcast, why I think he's really entertaining to watch, right? On almost every topic he talks about, except maybe mixed martial arts, he's not that intellectual or that much of an intelligent guy. But that's the key thing about him. He's a really great everyman. Because what he is someone who himself is a jock, is a meathead, and in a different life, maybe in a different environment, different things happened to him, would have just been a very dull-witted guy who was just very average, maybe did just a standard blue-collar job and just maybe liked American football or something. But somehow, he's been lucky enough to escape that to a degree where he's become quite a reflective guy, and he has looked into a lot of areas, and he's very curious as a result. And so the key thing about it that's interesting is, like I said with the toxoplasmosis thing, he didn't have all brilliant facts about it, but he knew just enough about it to at least convey that aspect to me. So the thing about fREAKAZOiD is, I actually think that, okay, maybe on his most base level, he does have these problems. Maybe he would be a bit aggressive with people, or he would talk a bit reckless like he did in this chat here. Maybe he was having a bad day and he snapped or whatever. I think what's good is that sometimes he does try to be more than that and try to be a good guy and try to be like, oh, we should be positive in the community and not do that. And as a result, it's weird because since he's doing that most of the time, you take that as his baseline state. Then when he drops down like this, you're like, oh, it's all fake. He's just a liar and a hypocrite. No, it's good that he's trying to do that. Unfortunately, he fucked up in this case. And as I pointed out in my video, he's done it a bunch of times where he's fucked up. Like he's had the bad moment or he's been on stream when he's done it. And I have to say, I'm just going to say this now. I don't care if this causes drama, Rich. I might have actually gone too far to be reasonable in my video because believe it or not, when I put that video out, I mean, we've already mentioned on the show, I had an incident with him where he tried to sort of fuck with me a bit and tried to big brother me.
You know what? Look, I'll say now, because I know, like, we try and lift the veil a little bit, and I think it's very important that we don't start revealing everything that goes on, and we protect players a little bit from themselves. Sure. I would expect the same courtesy. After parties can get a little bit wild. Yeah. I don't necessarily want those details flooding out, and I think I did Dan DDK a little disservice by talking about some of his chat up lines. So I definitely apologize for that. But obviously, we want to share a little bit about who we are as humans with our fans, with the audience, whatever. But are you comfortable talking about what happened? Because I think this is a very important point, because you actually framed it in your video as if it was an almost, a suggestion, but it was close to being heated, wasn't it?
I mean, I think we mentioned this on a past episode. I forget when though, so I don't know how much. The problem is when you have a lot of conversations offline, as in like privately, you forget how much actually was mentioned on the shows. Essentially, we had two interactions. One was where he in a way that was totally not a big deal, wasn't very confrontational, actually did have a chat, and he brought some of these things up in a reasonable manner, like, oh, maybe, you seem like you're too negative on the community, or you have to realize that some of his points were good. Like one point he made that was quite good that I hadn't thought of was, he just made the point that if you say something along these lines, even if you don't mean it to be this huge big deal, if a lot of people who are naive or casual members of the scene hear that, they might take it as a really extreme way, and then they might think he was going a bit too far and playing I influence all these people, which is come on, mate, everyone influences everyone. But he had a point there in as much as I could be in some way the butterfly effect to more negativity in the scene. So I did take some of that on board. Problem is, there was then a later scenario where he tried to confront me, where essentially, he never explicitly said, I'm going to beat you up now. But the constant implication was if you in any way talk shit now, I will beat you up. Or if you in any way want to have a fight, let's have a fight now. And obviously that's ridiculous for a start off. Don't even know the guy. I haven't done fuck all of the guy. And in general, that he was saying the same shit. He was saying the same sorts of things, but then it becomes a bit obnoxious because then it's really? So we're going to talk about negativity while you're trying to fucking get up in my face, basically. That's a bit ridiculous, mate. So the thing is though, I put that past me, whatever. It's not a big deal. Nothing happened there. It was a mistake from him, but whether he thinks so or not, the problem is, Richard, I only had that scenario to go on. So I tried to be fair and think, right, well, maybe that was just because, obviously, think of all the personalities in the scene. I'm obviously an extremely abrasive personality who's very polarizing. And especially, you'll notice the trend is, even people who end up being friends of mine later on, when they first meet me, might be really polarized. Like, they might have only heard like a snippet of something I said, or they might have...
we used to be like that.
No, but I mean, there's people who are worse than that. Like, there's players where maybe they only saw when I talked shit about them or when I made fun of them. So they don't know that elsewhere I might have like said wonderful things about them, how good they were and whatnot. So the problem is I get that. So I thought, right, well, maybe I'm the anomaly. Maybe that's the one incident where he was ever like that. The problem is, Richard, when I made this video and I published it, and I said, I think deep down he's a good guy, which I do to a degree. Like, I think he's trying, put it that way. I have to say this, bear in mind, I only published this video like 6 hours ago. I had more than one person contact me from the esports industry and be like, oh, is that who that guy is? I actually met that guy and he did something similar to me, actually. He like tried to like, was like kind of aggressive to me, or he was trying to be like, it was kind of like a bit in my face, you know? And so I just want to say, as a general point, again, much like with this scenario, I doubt he's like that all the time, but it's clearly a tendency he has, or it's clearly a way where he doesn't have very good conflict resolution himself. So I will say, he's not. I don't want to go too far into like he's a great guy and he just made it. But I think it's like there's a grey area involved here, put it that way.
Yeah, and again, I honestly think though it stems from this desire to sort of be the tyrant toppler, the bully slayer. You know, like I honestly think this is what he prides himself on. I think he would believe if I was to sit down and describe. As to get him to describe how he feels about you, I would bet dollars to donuts, which I'm partial to. He would describe you as a bully. I think the word bully would come up.
Oh, I'm sure he'd think so.
That you use your platform to basically make a living, to gain attention for yourself by highlighting the flaws in others and really relishing twisting the knife and you know what I think we understand is that this is yes sometimes it can go a little bit pantomime, but this is part of it. There isn't a single athlete out there that when the chips are down, when things aren't going so well, you have to face your critics. And there was a quote, I think, the other day. I can't remember who said it. I'm sure you've heard it. He goes, the problem with people is that most of us would rather be spoiled by praise than saved by criticism. And I think that applies to the vast majority of esports pros. And I'm going to get to life under the magnifying glass in a second. There's a broader topic. But I think he perceives you to be a bully, that you've got this amazing platform, this amazing influence. And yet, you know, when Cloud9 were having a bad time after that great run they had, where you even ranked them as high as top 4, obviously you don't remember that. You remember that when they go out in last place, when you're there, you know, grinning, that Thorin grin, the Lord Baelish grin, like, and you're just there, like, just wrecking them, like, FREAKAZOiD, yeah, but one of the worst ratings ever at LAN. Maybe if you didn't take all that fucking Adderall, you know, just whatever it is. And I think he thinks you're a bully, and that's why he probably has confronted you. Honestly, I think that would be the psychological process.
No, I think to a degree. The problem is, first of all, it's like he's obviously gone way too far on that. Like the implication that all I'm doing is bullying and there's no value to it and blah, 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 all that stuff. That's obviously ridiculous, like exaggeration of it and just ignoring other parts of their job. But there's also the fact that I think, unfortunately, he's chosen a poor way to express that. Like here's the thing, like I say, I think he is trying to be someone who's better than that, trying to be positive and all this. The problem is he himself engages with this exact sort of behavior. I mean, I pointed out where for no reason just like rips on War Owl for like, what? What the fuck's that guy ever done? I mean, here's the thing, Richard. Normally, when someone acts like reckless like that, there's like a joke in the African-American community where you'd be like, I'm gonna tell your mama on you. But actually, Rich, after seeing some of those streams, I'm pretty sure his mom would fucking launch him off the top rope. It's like Dudley Boy style onto me or something. So I don't know if I would tell his mama on him.
3D. Yeah, maybe. And then, yeah, and obviously, you can see culturally, again, that's the background he's from. These are the values he obviously holds dear at his core. But unfortunately, living life in this spotlight, in this scrutiny, you can't do it. And I think it sucks when you have to live a dual life. I mean, I think me and you both, the reason we can sleep easily at night, apart from all the skrilla we get from people like Alphadraft and things like that, is that I gave up attempting to lead that double life like some time ago. You know, I don't want to be the fucking role model. I'm not going to do it. If someone calls me out on Twitter, I'm gonna call them out back, I don't see why the rules are different for me because someone has applied a label to me that I don't embrace. I didn't enter into a Faustian pact where it's like, the price for your success is you will be constantly scrutinized and you have to live your life by a totally different code of rules now. Like, I just want to be who I am. And if people want to make value judgments about that, they're welcome to. But I'm never going to change who I am to appease strangers. It makes no sense. How would anyone want to live that way? And I think it's the same for you. I think at some point in our careers, like, something dropped and we made a conscious effort. Like, I think after we've been involved in the 50th fucking drama of our esports careers and we were just getting shit on by all the people who were at the top of the scene who, for whatever reason, just take great relish in being, oh, look, someone else in the industry is in trouble. It could very well be me next week, but what I'm going to do this week is destroy their careers. And I remember I was very surprised, for example, by, like, if you think about in StarCraft, when Naniwa had that thing at Katowice, where he basically effectively walked out of a game, said he didn't want to be at the tournament, said he didn't think the sound setup was optimal, didn't want to play. And all of the people at the top came out and were like, I hope that's the end of his career now. Like, everybody just shit on him. And you're like, you're industry people. You must have enough wherewithal to realize that he's box office. He's very good for the health of the industry. He's very good for the health of StarCraft. He is one of the few players that's capable of beating Koreans in their game, on their soil. This is a player who was willing to go to Seoul and live there alone and train to get better, where other players won't do it because they say it's too much of a culture shock. And yet, everyone in the industry said, get rid of this guy. Like, he's gone too far this time. And I just think it must be horrible to have to pander to people like that. It must be horrible. And unfortunately, the nature of esports is we all have to do it. Now,
the thing is, though, I actually just want to make a point. That's actually exactly why I think that's where they made the mistake in StarCraft. This mistake in StarCraft was to make it like this. Like, Nanoa, there's this small box. Either you fit in the box or you're not one of us. Whereas instead what they should have done was they were never going to change him, right? So what they should have said was, we're going to have to accept him as he is. And by accepting him and making him part of the group and some of us being friends with him and having us in the scene, we can at least encourage the best of him. So he won't be that bad as often. Now, it's the same scenario with someone like fREAKAZoiD. Now, we don't just kick him out the whole scene because he talked shit or whatever, or he seemed like he was BM. We try and encourage what we've seen as the good part of him. And hopefully we do the same with people like Simple. Like, here's the thing. I haven't, anyone who thinks that in these two incidents, I'm like a Simple fan. The guy has literally sent me pictures of him doing that multiple times. I've never spoken to him in real life ever. Yeah. So I have no reason to be a fan of this guy. I think he's a fantastic player. Seems like a dickhead as a person. But I know that calling him a dickhead and kicking him out the scene does nothing for anyone. So instead, what I try to do is I try to encourage him, like, yeah, you're a bit of a fuck up and whatnot, but why not try and find some teammates you can play with? Why not understand that this teammate is helping your career? I try to at least nudge him towards the right path where it's productive for everyone, because it's good to have people like fREAKAZoiD and like Simple in the scene rather than to just have a bunch of plebs.
Yeah, and we've got a bigger problem, in the sense that if we start sanitizing our game, I honestly think one of the contributing factors to why StarCraft is dead in the water now is that we did basically decide, well, the StarCraft community decided at some point, we actually want this conveyor belt of, homogenous, sanitized stars and ambassadors for the game. And we embraced all of the people at the top of StarCraft who were all fakes and frauds and liars, and cared about their bank balance primarily over the health of the game. And they pushed all of these brilliant mercurial talents out because of a personality that wasn't a good fit for what everyone believed to be the way to save StarCraft. And then everyone was like, fuck, games are boring now. Don't even know who the fuck this guy is. We really wish we had Stefano back. Really wish we had Idra back. Well, no, they're not coming back. And Idra even made that point. He said, I would never come back to StarCraft because the community has basically shit on anyone who's displayed anything close to a personality. And we should be very careful about going down that road. And obviously, I'm not just saying that because I think me and you would be beneficiaries from a little bit of tolerance and understanding. I just think in general, it's a general rule. You've got to give people space to be who they are. And you cannot have these Twitter mobs and these social media mobs basically trying to end someone's career when they falter for the first time, when they do something you consider to be an ethical lapse, which is the point. So think about how all the Brazilians All that nonsense has been put to bed. They've been fined on the quiet. No one's talking about it. Meanwhile, this.
By the way, after all this Freakazoid shit, loop back on the Brazilian thing because I have something else I need to say about that. But yeah, keep going on this point. Anyway.
I will do. But now let's have a look. The Freakazoid thing was blown up. The thread still remains on the front page of Reddit, entitled "Freakazoid Bullying Simple." It's been there for 10 hours. It has over 4,000 upvotes. Above that now is your video, Freakazoid's Attitude and Influence in CSGO. And I think it was actually a fair video. And like you say, I think perhaps you went a bit too overboard to try and be fair. There was a thread saying, "Let's welcome Simple and cheer him forward," as if Simple is somehow a victim figure.
He's not Orphan Annie, is he?
Yeah, no.
Let's twat. Let's just not goad him into being his worst self.
Yeah, but now there's this talk about because Intel have this anti-bullying campaign and obviously have a relationship with Cloud9 and indeed some of the other events like the IEM most notably, which obviously Cloud9 aren't going to be there because you need to qualify, but other events in future I'm sure they will be there. Because of this anti-bullying campaign, now people are messaging Intel and saying, look at this, and there's actually this groundswell of people saying, well, I'm going to email the sponsors. I read some absurd Reddit comments today, which I know aren't true. Like, I was going to buy a Cloud9 t-shirt this weekend, but after this, I have decided to buy a Team Liquid. Oh, fuck off. Who are you? Like, honestly, who are you? You fucking pathetic liar. You know what I mean? You fucking pathetic liar. And just the idea of a sports fan ever doing that. Well, I was about to sign up for a season ticket to Newcastle United. Then Sissoko got a red card. Better support Sunderland. Now, if you even think like that, get the fuck out of... go home, actually. You need to be sectioned. That's just not a rational way to think about things in life. So I did read some ridiculous comments, but people are now going after Freakazoid's career. They're attacking him financially. There is a pressure on Cloud9 to maybe even drop him from the team. And we see an apology from Stunner, obviously the manager over there, the general manager and / coach. I would like to apologize to Liquid Simple on behalf of Cloud9, and there will be consequences as this is entirely unacceptable. So the community is going to get its pound of flesh. It's going to get its pound of flesh. We just don't know whether Freakazoid is going to effectively bleed out from this. And I actually think that's disgusting, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I think when a mob forms and you try and take away someone's livelihood, I think it is grotesque. And I think everybody involved in messaging those sponsors, Intel aren't stupid. They can see Reddit. If they want to take action, they'll take action. You don't have to force their hand to do the right thing by making all these false proclamations about how you'll never use their products again, or how disappointed you are in them, and how much you love Anita Sarkeesian, or whatever else it is, right? So I actually am starting to think
it's always the bullshit ones as well, Rich. That's the worst part. If they really believed it, it would be one thing. Like, you're within your own right if you really were never going to buy it to let the company know. But it's always somewhat like you're saying, like Intel. It's like someone saying, "Oh, because of LeBron James, I will never drink Coke again." Really, motherfucker? So when you go to McDonald's at some point in some country and they're like, "Would you like a drink with that?" You'd be like, "Sprite this time." Shit, that's owned by Coke as well. Just an orange juice for me. You're just going to get the fucking Coke. Don't lie.
And let's be real. Let's put this into, again, let's contrast it to a very recent real life event with Manny Pacquiao. Now, Manny Pacquiao was doing an interview on Philippines TV, and he was asked, he's about, and obviously he's a what are they called? It's an offshoot of Christianity. I forget what it's called. Anyway, enlightened Christian or something. I think they like to call themselves.
Sounds like an oxymoron.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But anyway, Pacquiao came out and basically, when asked a question about how he felt about same-sex marriage or indeed homosexual relationships, he said that animals understand the difference between male and female, and I believe that congress of that nature should take place between opposite sex people, and therefore gay people are worse than animals.
You know what I love about that, Rich, is the idea that anyone goes, oh, well, if a guy who's paid to punch someone in the face says that, I'm outraged. It's like, who gives a shit?
This is my point. Now, As a result of the furor around this, Nike removed their sponsorship for Pacquiao, which I think is hilarious because now Nike are trying to act as moral arbiters and coming out and saying we support same-sex marriage. Yes, we fucking wreck everyone in sweatshops. Yes, we engage in multiple unethical practices for our business to make all this profit. But a boxer, a pugilist by trade, who I wouldn't credit him with an active thought in his brain. You know, like, I mean, I wouldn't look to a boxer for moral advice at any point in my life. But because he said it, now we're going to take away our endorsement. And that's fine. That's their choice. I do find it a little bit contradictory. But what makes it even more interesting is Pacquiao was held up as one of these great ambassadors for sports. He was. I believe there was some conflict, border conflict with the Philippines. Again, I'm sure somebody will be able to tell me a bit more about it. I don't have all the facts here, but apparently he was instrumental in trying to stop this conflict and promoting it, and he's done all this humanitarian aid efforts, and has been an ambassador, and of course is an icon in his country, and all of that has gone away now because of some errant comments that he made. And again, within a culture where same-sex marriage will probably never be permitted, certainly not in our lifetimes, because homophobia is incredibly entrenched out there. And I think that's a fair comment. Again, I'm not trying to disparage the Philippines people. I've just made an impassioned talk about how we should respect different cultures, even though I think homophobia is a repellent standpoint. So I think those comments by Pacquiao may warrant the removal of a sponsorship deal from Nike. I'm sure he'll find another sponsor soon. I'm sure it won't hurt his bank balance too much because Nike obviously are global and they need to be seen to endorse whatever the kind of cultural adoptions that you have to do if you want to be a global company. And certainly they can't risk people boycotting their products because obviously they lose all their money. And it's interesting again that society would boycott their products over a partner saying I don't support same-sex marriage, but wouldn't over their sweatshop policies. I guess that says a lot about the West. Now, Freakazoid didn't say anything half as bad as that. He didn't come out and say gay people are worse than animals or anything like that. He got into a very embarrassing, childish verbal altercation with another fellow pro in a public setting when he didn't even realize he was being... I don't even think he realized it was being streamed. And people are trying to take his career away. People are going to try and get him kicked out of his team. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable.
I mean, it's fucked up, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just horrible. Like, there's no way that is a reasonable punishment for someone who's done that.
Yeah. And I again, it's like, while I can agree this was an issue that needed to be highlighted and some discipline might be appropriate, I would hate if the community, if the one time we unified to try and make something, to affect change, would be simply to take someone's career away from them. Because I don't know if Freakazoid would get into another team. I certainly think he'd be, if he actually does get kicked from Cloud9, he'd be too hot to handle for a while. And equally, I don't know statistically if he would measure up to some of the other teams out there. I think we've got like some other talent people might want to gamble on before. It could ultimately see him cast out into a wilderness he never comes back from.
Oh, by the way, whenever this thing happens as well, there's always a sort of massive asshole hater who makes a comment like this. It'll always go, he showed his true colors. Now he's so two-faced. We've seen the real him. No, that's the whole point of this, guys, is that they can't keep up an act all day long. In fact, they can't be one way all day long. Even if these people know they're being streamed, and even if they're paid thousands of dollars, eventually they're going to run through the gamut of emotions. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be angry. They're going to lash out. They're going to. So the whole point is, this is not what Freakazoid is like every second of every day. That's ridiculous. Who the fuck? I told you, the guy isn't super intelligent. He's not some god tier actor who faked like he was a nice guy all the time. He was probably being a nice guy at those times, and now he's being a bit of an asshole. He has more to his character than one aspect. Anyone who says that, I seriously wonder if you are like developmentally in your brain like 11 years old or something. I've caught who you really are. Like, come on, mate. Humans aren't like that. Let's not be ridiculous, community members.
And yeah, it's sad to see mobs form. Now, I'm sure internally Cloud9 are gonna deal with this situation. I'm sure it's actually gonna put Ryan on very thin ice and add an extra layer of pressure because if somebody's got all this baggage with them, if Cloud9 do back him and stand by him, and then he continues to underperform, and the team continues to underperform, he's first on the chopping block. Now, he will be the first one out the door, regardless of whether it happens over this or something else. So there's already with this negativity, and you'll notice he can't come out and defend himself. He'll have been told not to. That's the standard approach now, I believe.
I mean, to be fair,
kill it with silence.
Talking wasn't really working out for him. If I were him, I'd stick to just running in with that AK and trying to tag two and a half bullets into someone that Shroud then finishes off. I think that's the way he responds, mate. Just come out and get Shroud another 30 bomb. That's your job. Talking wasn't working out for you, mate. Listen, it's not your fault. You have skills elsewhere. You can lift a larger weight than most people proportional to your size above your head for at least a second and then slowly put it down again, thus making yourself even stronger. That's a great skill to have. Leave thinking and talking up to people like me, where we're mentally that sort of a giant, somewhere like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. Your job is to move heavy items from here to here, but without tearing a muscle in a bad way.
Yep. So
good show, right? Good show so far.
Yeah, it's been good. So you wanted to make a point about the Brazilians, and I think we're going to move on.
Oh yeah. Here's the key point to make. Yep. People, because I never reveal like private logs, people don't know the extent of how ridiculous it got, Richard. So because I made some comments where essentially what I told people like for Taco and Dead is like, don't go talking mad shit like that. Especially, I said, if you're going to just delete your comments anyway. Like, if you're going to be a little pussy and just delete it all, don't do it in the first place. It's ridiculous. And don't go talking fucking reckless like that in our community where there's even a hint that you could be talking about kicking someone in at LAN or killing them, because we won't stand for that. That is unacceptable. So when I made these comments, and I made a bunch of other comments as people kept spamming me all sorts of abusive shit about how ridiculous the Brazilian fans are. Like, you saw all the shit they did. They rationalized away everything the Brazilians did, and everything Simple did was terrible, and him insulting someone makes him a piece of shit who deserves any punishment. So I wrecked them, as I usually do with people who I think are pieces of shit like that. I try to show them what scum they are, and then I wreck them. So in doing so, I had a backlash, Rich, which, no exaggeration, I've never had from any other country except one. Which is when I had all that Poland stuff happened, where I had hundreds of messages to Facebook, people trying to forget tweets, because you can ignore tweets. Forget Reddit comments, you can not go on Reddit. If you're on your Facebook, you can't just not ever check messages ever again. So if people send you messages there, if you don't even see them, you're at least going to see that one exists from a name of someone who's from that country. You're going to know roughly what it is. I had almost as bad as the Polish incident, Rich, in terms of the number I got. And remember, I didn't say anything about Brazil being shit or the terrible country and they're all racist. Didn't say any of that stuff. All I did is criticize this scenario where they talk reckless. So I had hundreds of messages like, they will kill me, I'm obviously homosexual, my family should be raped. And by the way, some of them in English, some of them in Portuguese. I had hundreds of these messages, to the extent that I'm just going to reveal this now. I'm not going to reveal any details because I know this is supposed to be private, but someone in the future is planning a project in Brazil. I won't mention any more details than that. A project in Brazil where they wanted a bunch of people who are really big in Counterstrike, including Europeans and North Americans, to come over and be involved in this project so that they could put Brazil on the map and that they could have a really cool thing in their scene. And they contacted me first out of all the people, right? And because actually I happened to be friends with one of them on Facebook. And they said, like, oh, we want you to be involved, but you know what? We want to have like really high quality talent. Like, could you contact other people? Could you talk to like other casters and other people who are players and stuff? Could you try and get people on board? I said, you know what? I've known you for a long time. I'll do my best. And so I reached out to all these other people and I got them involved, and I got loads of people that they wanted their like premium list to all be like, yeah, I'll think about this actually. I'll see if I can do it in a few months. So then, because of this incident, though, and I was planning to go there as well, I'm definitely not going there now, Rich. There's zero chance I'm going there. Why would I? Why would I ever go to somewhere where that many people have been abusive and literally said like they're going to kill me and rape me also? I'm not going to do it, Rich. So guess what? I'm pulling out, and I'll bet, now that other people know this, I'll bet a bunch of the other people pull out. So you know what? All that's happened now is the Brazilian fans have just fucked over themselves from whatever great project it is that's coming up, which will now be worse, I'm afraid. And that's a very big shame because we were all planning on being involved in it.
Yeah, that's news to me. And obviously,
so there's two countries I'm never going to: Poland, Brazil. There we go. Because just as a side point, as much as I've talked shit on Americans in the same fashion, making fun of them or wrecking them when they're idiots, I'll give credit to North Americans and people from most countries, by the way. The number of people who ever done something like that from North America, I could count on 2 hands over like 15 years. For Brazil, we're talking hundreds already off this one incident where it wasn't even about me. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a shame. But yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. Now, look, I want to. There is some actual Counterstrike news to talk about, and we're going to get into that. And it looks like the show might run over past its usual 2 hours, unless you've got somewhere to go. But I do want to talk about, just as a general point now, this living. You touched on it in your video, and I just want to have some points here about it for the sake of the VOD, and that is about living life with fame, right? And that's where all of these problems stem from, I think. For our esports competitors, for our personalities, what we've got is because we're an internet-driven industry, social media is so important. There's this level of access that I don't think you would get with other celebrity, and I use that term loosely. The celebrity pursuits, music, whatever. It's kind of like you get none of the rewards. You don't get the limos. You don't get the groupies, right? You don't. Well, I don't get the groupies, obviously. You do. You don't have mad amounts of Skrilla. Again, maybe this doesn't apply to you, but it's a hard job.
I can remember when I was in that position, Rich, a few years ago.
Yeah, right. So, obviously, it's a hard job to do, and you're on 24/7. There's this level of access, and everything you say or everything you do, you never know if it's going to blow up. Did somebody see that? Is that going to be a problem? And then you've got all of the negative aspects of the trappings of fame, and nobody trains you coming into this. Nobody says like one day you will have like 100,000 Twitter followers. You'll have hundreds of thousands of people watching what you do on a broadcast, and they will be judging you every second of that. And also as well, now people think you are now some sort of moral arbiter, role model. And players, I think, struggle with this because it is just a game. You do just want to be yourself. You do just want to trash talk. You do just want to get on with the business of playing and not have all of this baggage that comes with it. But the baggage comes with it, and you can't get away from it. So, I mean, is there anything that you can do? Like, is there any advice Lord Thorin would dispense to deal with this ongoing problem? And that is that players really struggle with the other expectation. And if anyone says, oh, that's just being professional, you don't know what you're fucking talking about. Because you can go into your fucking boring, button-down 9 to 5 fucking job, and you go home at 5 o'clock and nobody calls you, nobody's looking through your window to see what you get up to, what your proclivities are in the bedroom, or your private shit remains private. In an entertainment industry job, which I guess ostensibly is what this is, there's a level of scrutiny which would blow anyone's fucking mind. Total Biscuits, has talked about it a lot, how just no one should ever have to deal with it. It's just it's not how humans were supposed to live.
Well, no, the big problem here is that people essentially don't have any compassion for anyone else. And so what happens is, like you saw the way I talked about fREAKAZoiD there, I've explained to you, he fucked with me. I don't particularly like the guy. I have no reason to like him. He's never done anything nice to me, but I didn't go out of my way to lie and make things up and go, oh, he should be fired and never work in this industry again. That's because I have compassion for the fact that maybe he was having a bad day when these things happen. Maybe he's not that bad a person. Maybe if I weigh all the things up, even though he's done something bad here, it wasn't that bad in the context. Like, I've tried to be as reasonable as I can. Other people don't have that compassion. So they will be ridiculous and be like, oh, well, if I was in that situation, I'd do that. You don't know what the fuck you'd do in that situation, mate. You have no experience. The person saying that right now doesn't even have 1,000 Twitter followers. They've never even had 10 people walk down the street that they don't know and that can then comment on them and look at them and say something to. They've never had any of these things happen. So they don't have a faintest clue of what they would do in that situation. They can't even conceive of what it would be like. And yet they are judging someone harshly as if not only do they know what it's like, but they would be perfect in that situation. They do exactly the right thing. And they think illogical things like, well, if I got paid that much, I'd never make a single comment. How the fuck would you? How would you live your whole life silent and never say anything? You get the money. I mean, people always love to use that ridiculous statement like, well, at my job, I'm not allowed to do that, when they obviously have a job that sucks dick. Well, imagine this. Imagine your job sucked that way, like you want it to, like you want his to rather, but your job never ended. So like Richard says, so you know how at work you can't even make a vague, edgy joke in case your boss fires you. Now imagine that rule extends to when you're at home and he can listen to what you're saying. And if you say anything at home, he then fires you. Suddenly it wouldn't seem worth it for £20,000 a year, would it? Yeah, that's basically what you want a load of these people in esports to be doing, where they have none of the advantages. And by the way, I think the only reason this isn't constantly gone on about by real world celebrities is because they do think, right, well, I do get paid $50 million a year, so I will just accept it and pretend like it's not an issue. But inside, it's killing them. Now, the big problem with the internet is the internet and esports allows you to have fame comparable to a celebrity who makes millions without any of those millions, without the security guards, without any of the shit that you get for it. So we don't have any of the benefits in that sense.
And you know, I think it's important as well. You know, again, just this scrutiny, people like you say. I think to sort of frame it. You know how like people get outraged when employers, for example, might use Facebook to determine whether you're suitable for a job interview, or they actually monitor their employer's social media output because somehow, tacitly, by taking someone's money to do a job, to do a service, to sell your labor, sell your skills, somehow you have to become a brand ambassador for everything that company becomes about these days. So employers now routinely scan an employee's social media, their Facebook and everything they do. And people go, it's a bit dystopian, this. It's gone a bit too far, hasn't it? No one ever applies that logic when it's us. No one ever says, well, you know, we should only really judge them when they're on a broadcast. No one says that. I've never been afforded the benefit of that doubt. You know, it seems to me incredible that people will look at it and go, oh, well, it's your job, so you've got to be professional. And then meanwhile, it's like, okay, well, why don't these rules apply to you? Oh, well, my job's not in the public eye, is it? Well, brilliant. Yeah, you're a fucking nobody. Well done. You know, fuck off. I wish I could go back to a fucking regular 9 to 5 job sometimes. You know what I mean? You don't have any influence over a broader context, over a fucking audience. People don't care about your opinion. Why is it only the negative? Why is it only the negative that comes with that? Honestly, it blows my fucking mind.
Well, it's
that
like
somehow underachievement is actually to be embraced because it affords you a level of privacy.
Well, no, what's funny is in the game this happens because people, we used Simple as an example before because he's an exaggerated version. But people will always be like, wow, I can't believe this pro player is such an asshole to his teammate. That's because you are a fucking Gold Nova scrub who has never wanted to be more than that, never put in any effort to be more than that, will never have the drive to do what it takes to be more than that, and will never leave behind old teammates and friends to go to a better team that you don't know anyone on, to become to the next level, and then battle knowing you might never make it, to then try and make it to pro. Because you've never done any of that things, have you seen my point here? You're not that person. So why would you judge that person by the way you've lived your life? Maybe you play the game for fun. He doesn't. It's his fucking career. Maybe you play the game just as a laugh, and it's not a big deal. Like, you know, the people. Here's what's mad. People can always go psycho at the player who's too harsh, right? Yet who of us enjoys going into a matchmaking game with the guy who acts like a dickhead and then goes, well, I'm only playing for fun, mate. We all hate that guy. And yet he's the other end of the spectrum. That's who you are. You're presenting yourself as when you go ham at the guy who goes too serious.
Yeah, it is ridiculous, and it's like I say, you know, look, you can achieve excellence in many ways that don't involve fame. There are some careers, yes, where you can make a contribution, societally speaking, but generally, if you're good at something, if you truly are exceptional in any field, there will be a degree of scrutiny. People will look to you for opinions. Yeah, it's only in the entertainment. It's not really in the arts. It's not really. It kind of is a little bit. It's not really in the sciences. Although again, social justice movements are trying to basically politicize everything. But in the entertainment industry, it's like you're always on. You're always on. Everything you do is part of this broader definition of who you are as a person. You're not even allowed to have personas anymore. You couldn't just come out now, Duncan, and say, "Oh, all that edgy shit I do, it's just my persona, innit?" Like, people judge you. They think they know who you are based on the content you put out. It might be a bad example because in your case, I don't really think you give two fucks, Stephen. Do a persona, but you can't.
I mean, I have a persona.
There's no respite.
Like I always do say, people have to realize. Yeah, in general, I say what I think. But for example, if it's like DreamHack, or best example is Gfinity, obviously, where they like to have banter and stuff. I'm going to up the banter. Like, if it was just normal life, I wouldn't, like, rip on someone and just, like, unmercilessly who didn't know. But that's for entertainment. So to a degree, there's a persona. It's just that I'm not playing an entirely different character for sure.
And look at Kanye West. Like, okay, like, everyone's like, again, it blows my mind. Everyone's like, yeah, this guy, how fucking dare he beg for money publicly out with all the money he's made? And how dare he put these misogynistic lyrics in his songs? And how dare he say that about Taylor Swift? And all this, like, false, fucked up manufactured drama. The guy is clearly having a psychotic breakdown, by the way. I just want to point that out. Like, has anyone not realized this guy's got fucking deep problems? Like, deep problems. I don't know where they come from. I imagine some of them probably is related to the guilt that he must feel, with his mother dying on an operating table of an operation he paid for, right? Like, I imagine that might fuck you up a little bit. Just a little bit. Where's the compassion? Where's the sympathy? No, fuck Kanye West. Fuck him. He is an asshole. Like, look at his Twitter feed. Reads like the ramblings of a fucking mentally ill horse. Like, he needs help. He doesn't need to have the fucking big pile on. No one cares though. No, I've not seen one commentator, not one pundit, not one entertainment journalist, not one other celebrity actually come out and fucking say this guy's fucked. He's again. He looks like he's having a psychotic episode. Did you see the company thing he did? That Steve Colbert broke down, where he was like, "This is where the $1 billion would go," and it was just words on a bit of paper, like cars, AIDS. There's no business plan. The guy's fucked. Yeah, I've been around people who've had like psychotic breakdowns. I've seen people do things like that, put drawings up on their wall which are completely unintelligible and say that's like my life map. That's my. You're like, yeah, all right, mate. Yeah, I'm just gonna, tell your mum that you might not be very well. Because you need an intervention. But again, there's no compassion. It's just let's just fucking attack this guy.
Imagine if me and you were so big because esports got massive that we could actually hold an intervention for Kanye West. That's the dream. That's when esports has gotten big in a fridge. When we can sit Kanye West or Snoop Dogg or someone down in a room and be like, listen, you know who I am. You watch Turner E-League. I'm big as fuck. You've got some problems with your life, Snoop. It's like, hey man, a rizzle dizzle is like listen, Snoop. It's you got it. That weed. That ooh-wee that the guy sold you is too much, mate. You gotta back off that little, take a break, mate. Take a break.
Y'all can't fuck with, eh? So, right, let's talk about some news. Other big story that was happening is obviously the Koosta move. Interesting developments on this.
Simple just jumped over Freak Man. Woo!
I reported on this move over at Breitbart and got some confirmation that it was happening. Interestingly enough, now, even though he is going to be playing some games with them, it's not 100% at the moment. It's actually not 100%. There might be some contractual stuff that they still need to work through. I believe there's some maybe legal counsel going on. Could have an interesting twist at the end. But so far, everybody has accepted, from Enemy to Team Liquid to Koosta himself, that the move is certainly more likely than it isn't, and he's already embraced playing with them and trying out for them. Now, I've been a big fan of Koosta for the longest time, and and said I think this guy really has the potential. That this is the type of
wait a minute. When you say for the longest time, isn't it about a month and a half? Really?
No. I think since he first established himself.
That wasn't that long ago. It was like late 2015.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
But you said for the longest time. Right. It was
in esports terms, that's about 2 years.
Just a second, though.
Yeah.
You said that like you knew him since he was like 40. What? Now you really are. I was talking to Rio. Nah, man, I knew him when he was there. I remember on his mum's ultrasound. I was like, I'd love to care for this
mate,
kid.
I took him out of the CS orphanage and reared him and turned him into a great talent. All right, then, yeah, but all right, so 6-7 months or so. But it was clear he was a talent. From the moment I sort of laid eyes on him and saw, statistically what he was doing, and there was all the cheating accusations as well, which obviously comes these days. And he was, always destined for great things. You could see that the teammates he had around him weren't on a similar level, and in actual fact, he looked a much better talent than some of the established pros that we were talking about being, the bedrock of the NAC. So he seems to have that opportunity now. So I'm wondering what you think about it. Is this the final piece in the Team Liquid jigsaw?
I mean, the biggest problem is if we break the moves down again. So we'll do it like Renegade style, where I said, like, should we kick Carrick? Yes, 100%. Should we get this guy? Not so sure. So again, let's break the moves down. Should we kick Adren? Yes. That seems almost certain to me. I think that should definitely happen. Should we recruit Koosta? Yes. The problem is this an awesome team? That's where the problem is, because now we need to have like Hiko be the in-game leader or something. Like, if I could go back in time, I said this on my podcast, if I could go back in time and see that in the end scenario would be we'd kick Adren and get Koosta, I'd say do it the other way around, guys. Kick Adren and get what way round was it? I would have probably just done it like this. Not get Koosta, just kick Adren and just get Simple for Adren and keep Fogley, and he could have been the lurker then. Like, I think that would have been the better overall approach. I think they probably made a mistake there. But in the order of how things went, I think it's all fine. It is going to be an issue to not have a good in-game leader, but I don't think they had that good in-game leader anyway. I think that was way overrated because they weren't good on many maps and they weren't even that good on T-side. So I think people overrate that a bit. So I do think Koosta is the best rising talent. I actually feel bad for people like Cloud9 because, believe me, guys, people like Cloud9 and TSM wanted Koosta. Just back then, when they were signed to place, he wasn't available. He wouldn't leave the enemy team. So I actually feel kind of bad for them because they've gotten screwed over a little bit that he's now decided he's willing to leave, and now Team Liquid have sort of gotten him where he would have gone elsewhere. So it is the best possible move they can make. It's just that, unfortunately, this qualifier thing makes it even more tricky. So now there's even more question marks around it.
What about just in terms of, Koosta's going to be AWPing, Simple's moving back to rifling. We don't know what the in-game leader situation is going to be. I mean, man alive, Ryu suggested on my show when I interviewed him that GB James might do the calling for the team. So is there any way this move could fail and Team Liquid still out in some way still be massively underachieving within the context of...
I don't think... Put it this way. Here's why I don't think it was bad to remove Adren. I don't think they will be worse than the old team was. I think the potential is to be a lot better, and I don't think they're going to be worse. I don't even think GB James being the in-game leader, as in calling from the coach role, would be ridiculous. Like, if the team is fantastic, you won't even... It's not like you'll need some incredible tactics. You might not need to be that in-depth. You might be able to just call simple things, obviously no pun intended, and that'll just work. And here's the thing. Yes, Koosta should be the primary AWP because that should make him comfortable. But the great thing about recruiting Koosta is, first of all, Simple is one of the few people who's fantastic with both rifles and the AWP. So he definitely could be a rifle-only player if he wants. And as a secondary AWPer, obviously he can get some chances to do that as well. So the key thing for me is Koosta can be an AWPer, but he doesn't have to be the star player. They've still got Nitro, they've still got Simple, obviously. And that'll be a comfortable role. So I think it's a good move overall, yeah.
And again, because they have been underachieving, domestically. Are we still both comfortable in saying that they're the number one team in NA? I mean, obviously on paper, yes.
I mean, in terms of accomplishments, I think Cloud9, CLG finishing fourth at Game Show is pretty good. So I think in terms of pure accomplishments, I'd probably give them the slot at the moment, CLG. But I think that this will be the best team in NA. Like, I look at this lineup and I say it's going to be. I think it's just a matter of time.
And Hiko in the chat did just add there, saying we're starting with James and Nitro primarily calling. So some sort of hybrid. I guess what happens is James makes the call and Nitro translates it into English. I imagine would be good.
Okay.
So looking forward to seeing how those mighty Ducks...
Well, you never want to go full GB James. Just go partial GB James.
Yeah, that's what you need to do. So... The other bit of news that's been going on, obviously, was the sort of rise of the new Tempo Storm. I asked you the question when Tempo Storm picked up the Brazilians at Games Academy, and I know this is treacherous territory for you.
I'm never going to Brazil, so don't worry, mate. So.
Well, yeah, but
and they've already all said they'll kill me, so there's nowhere they can go from that.
Yeah, true.
What are they going to do? Bring me back to life and then kill me again? I mean, listen, mate. If they could bring people back to life in Brazil, I don't think I'd be the first one they'd be going for. I'm just making it more and more edgy, mate. It's getting more and more edgy.
Good. This is what I'm worried about. But come on, let's do it. So Tempo Storm obviously qualified for IM Katowice and beat all these American pretenders. And then they won the RGN Winter Classic as well. So, two tournament, for want of a better phraseology, two tournament wins with an immediate impact. How good a pickup does this look like?
It's good. The main issue I have, though, is I think this team has a pretty obvious ceiling. Like, I think the kind of level they're getting to now is I don't think they're going to go too far beyond that. Because, for example, remember, Luminosity didn't go crazy far beyond that. Luminosity got pretty good and they plateaued for a whole year almost. And then they had to get more skilled players and rejig the lineup. So the big issue for this team is probably waiting on other talent to be found in the Brazilian scene that they can then pick up. They can get their own Cold Zera, or some old player comes back and they get their own FNX. Like, that's where I see them having a chance to improve. So the big issue for me is, obviously, they're going to be at IEM Katowice. Great, they get to play there. I don't think that they will be going to the major. Like, I think they're in the major qualifier, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'll have a quick check, but I don't think they'll be qualifying for that. Put it that way. I'll just check quickly, just because it's worth knowing to make this comment. Let me see. Yes, they're in the major qualifier, but I don't think they'll be qualifying for that. So, they've got a chance. So in general, I think that the best case scenario for this team is probably to be a team that could make an event like IEM Katowice, make an event like the major, maybe, but probably come last place. I don't think they're going to go crazy beyond that. And in fact, if anything, I think that the NA, it shows how bad the NA teams are at the moment that this team qualified, not that this team is the new Luminosity and is going to be like a top 10 team in the world. I don't think that's reasonable right now.
Do you have any philosophical...
Also, it was all online. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is partly linked to that. So, do you have any philosophical or ethical quandaries, or any kind of objection to the fact that during the qualifier they were being openly kind of coached and supported by Luminosity? They had the benefit of having the full sort of Luminosity players there, fallen behind them. And perhaps gained a level of insight and expertise and had a level of support that maybe other teams in the online qualifier wouldn't have had. I mean, is there not an argument there that having the tactical input of another team who aren't competing in the qualifier live during the games is problematic?
The problem with that is I don't know if, like for example, if he was actually talking to them during the games, I would agree, actually. I think that's kind of bullshit. Not least, by the way, because it means that in theory, he can't do that for them when they are in Katowice. So essentially, you've qualified sort of on false pretenses that you're not going to be able to live up to yourself. So it'll suck for everyone else because you knocked everyone out and you'll go to Katowice and get wrecked. So if that's the case, that is problematic. In general, if they were just talking to them before maps, I don't think this is as big a deal, because in theory, CLG could message someone that's a friend of theirs in Team Liquid who just played them and go, oh, what did they do in Overpass, whatever the case is, and get some advice. So everyone could do that. But I agree, if he was in any way like between rounds saying something, or God forbid, because who knows, shot calling for them, if there's anything like that, that would be egregious, I think.
Yeah, and of course, remember that CLG tweeted saying that they couldn't have a coach on the server, which made his input incredibly difficult. So it seemed they did have an unfair advantage in that sense. I'm not saying necessarily I endorse whether or not it's a philosophical problem, whether it is an issue and something that should be looked into or looked at. But certainly, I do feel they had an advantage that maybe other teams didn't, and that's perhaps it needs to be more clearly defined moving forward, because the rules about coaching and what constitutes coaching and that level of input does seem a bit ephemeral and like wishy-washy. It doesn't really seem to be any nailed down things, like you're allowed one person to stand behind the team at any time, or whatever the rules are. So it did seem an issue. And then of course there was DDoSing as well, which tends to happen with when certain nations play.
That kills me alone right there, mate. There's certain countries where when they play online matches, the opponent starts to have weird internet problems that they never have. Yeah. But of course, that's xenophobic to say that, Rich, even though, as I just stated, it's an obvious pattern, which is essentially a kind of fact in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird how facts can be xenophobic and racist, I find. It's odd, isn't it? But yeah, it's an issue. I still got to say, we really need to look solutions wise. We've got to get smarter on the DDoSing problem. I can't believe we're this far along into the scene and DDoSing is still literally impacting on not just broadcasts but tournaments. And I've never been critical of DDoSers, which I probably should be. Everyone else in the industry is. Yes, they are fucking up, you're shit when they do it. But what they do is they set that it's like, I don't know, it's like fucking base jumping or something. Like you go somewhere where you're not supposed to go and you jump off it and you say fuck it, I did it. And what they're doing is how they're mentally applying their particular skill set is, I want to look at something that should be hard to DDoS, and I'm going to try and DDoS it. Now, yes, all these little kids who are just DDoSing online games, I'm not sure they're cut from the same cloth as like people who take down like Cloudflare, a DDoS protection plugin or service that you can purchase. But certainly, I think we've got to take some fucking responsibility and say, yeah, we actually do need to put our foot down and be able to stop this. The amount of tournaments that can't, the amount of teams that can't, does seem to be ridiculous. I'm kind of on the fence between both of them.
Okay.
Destiny, who I obviously used to do a show with called Unfiltered. I'm sure you know it. He always used to say that, if you get DDoSed, fuck you, it's your fault. You need to protect yourself. So I don't know if you have a stance on this issue.
I declare a bounty on Destiny and his stream. Anyone who can DDoS him will receive a share of the bounty. The games begin now and end when he is dead.
Well, yeah, that you know what? Out of all the stuff we've talked about and all the stuff that's said, I guarantee that's the one bit that's going to get you called irresponsible.
Why not?
But sorry, we can all show some solidarity with Freak when the inevitable witch hunt comes. So. I don't know. I don't know if you want to talk about the main qualifier groups. I think I might drag on a little bit. I'm sure you're going to make a video about it anyway, as is your want. So I just wanted to talk about one last topic, and then I think we can bail. And this is an important one for me. Virtus.Pro. Now you'll remember this is high stakes because we've got a bet going on about whether FaZe or Virtus.Pro are going to be more successful this year. And obviously, we did agree that it wouldn't include online stuff. It can only be LANs. But they've had a disastrous time in the ESL Pro League. Absolutely disastrous. They're 0-8. When that's losses at the end. Just in case anyone thinks. So 0-0-8. No draws. And yeah, they are looking terrible, and this has coincided with a real drop in the performance from Snacks, who, if you look at his stats for the last perhaps even 2.5 months, he's really underperforming from this level that we all expect him to be. This is the player that HLTV placed at number 4 overall in the players of 2015. So what's the problem with Virtus.Pro? Have we reached the end of the road, this incredible journey with these veteran players?
Here's the thing. I don't think you can say it yet, which might sound weird, because here's the context. The problems have largely been online. As in, yes, DreamHack Leipzig, they shit the bed. They finished last place. That's terrible. So they had one LAN that they failed. Before that, their last LAN was ages ago. It was at the end of November. It was the Face at Stage 3, and they made the top 4 there and took a map off Fnatic, who won the tournament. So that LAN was fine. Now, before even that LAN was where the online woes began. Like in the last ESL season, they did badly and they didn't make the offline finals. They did really poorly there as well. Not as bad as now, but pretty poorly. And over the last sort of 4 or 5 months, they have been getting worse and worse online, and they have had a lot of online competitions they haven't done very well in. So the main problem I have right now is that I can only judge Virtus.Pro on LAN play. So if they go to 2 more tournaments and start to shit the bed more, then I'll know there's something wrong. Because the problem is, if you bear in mind that it's only been one bad LAN, I mean, admittedly, they're not qualifying for the LANs to play bad at, I'll give you that. That's why it's hard to gauge, because we know in the past when they've dropped off that they've even had bad LANs, like 2 out of 3 bad LANs. Like, for example, they had the tournament you were at, Asus ROG, they finished in the group stage there last year, beginning of last year. Then they had a Gfinity where they finished last place. But the point is, if you give them 5 LANs, they will always have picked it up within that amount of time. That's when they'll have a top 4, and then they'll win a LAN after 5 or 6, and then you'll really know if they've dropped off. Now, with that said, it is a case that while I think that's a pretty solid pattern to go with, eventually that pattern won't repeat forever. Eventually they'll have a period where they do badly and they never recover, and they do have to make a change. So I admit, eventually it's going to happen. So I am keeping a close eye on this to see if that is what's happening now. But right now, unfortunately, I think a lot of it's just online play, and I need to see them play a few LANs. Like if they play a couple more LANs and they go out last place, or they lose a series to like for example, if they got wrecked in a series by Dignitas on LAN again, then I'd very much be looking at that. The other thing is, when they did lose that LAN, they lost a series to Dignitas there, and the third map, I remember it were the 3 maps, was an overtime special. So it's not like they got bodied there. So, I mean, I haven't quite the sky isn't falling entirely with Virtus.Pro for me right now, even though I agree, Snax is playing terribly, and he's obviously a key player, and the online form's dog shit.
So, if let's theorize, if there were problems in the team that can't be fixed, what do you think they are?
Well, I mean, the big problem with this team is what's funny. Virtus.Pro remind me of the French scene. Because what happens in the French scene, we all know now, is the French shuffle happens every 6 to 9 months, let's say. There's a French shuffle between the two top teams. And what nearly always happens is, it happens because someone drops off in their role, so you need to get a new player for that role, or someone has an argument with someone, so he has to be kicked. Now, what's funny about Virtus.Pro is they shuffle within the team and yet never kick anyone. What they do is they change the leadership and it goes to a different person. Now, the reason why I also make the analogy is because the French shuffle happens and then the team plays the exact same fucking style afterwards with people in slightly different roles. Likewise, Virtus.Pro changing game leader play the exact same style of Counterstrike and are usually equally as good. So I think first step is to do what they did before, probably changing game leader again, maybe swap up the role. Like if Snax really is going to underperform, maybe now we have to build the game more around Pasha again. Maybe it has to go back to him being allowed to do what he wants to do all the time. Maybe that's the approach, because that's what they've done in the past. They changed someone's role. So I think that's an obvious approach to take. Eventually, if there are enough LAN failures, obviously then it's roster move time. Like if they go 3 or 4 LANs with not very good results, I would even say, yeah, time for a roster move.
Well, and it begs the eternal question, who would it be? Because we know who the pretenders to Virtus.Pro are, but none of them are as good, or rather weren't and haven't been as good as Virtus.Pro. Are we now at a stage where, I mean, perhaps these guys should be getting a shot? I mean, people would instantly say Miku because of the relationship he's had with the team. I'm not entirely convinced by that. It might be time maybe give someone, I don't know, like an AWP like Pete or someone a go and take Neo back off the AWP. It seemed to have rejuvenated them for a period, and that seems to have worn off a little bit now. But I don't really know who it would be that would transition into Virtus.Pro, assuming it had to be Polish.
No, obviously. I mean, by the way, that's something I think they should actually consider, by the way, is that they don't have to get a Polish player. Like, if I were them, this might sound crazy. So, okay, here's 2 moves for you that are potential that they should at least consider. One is, I mean, obviously he's in mouse spots now, but if someone like Nico is willing to go around and play with other people, well, there's some fragging power for you right there. If you need to replace someone, bang, put him in the lineup. Or here's another one. Now, obviously, Na'Vi is amazing right now, and Guardian is amazing right now. But throughout his whole career, Guardian has constantly complained behind the scenes, like, I'm going to leave, I'm bored of it, I'm sick of this. He doesn't complain in a massive way, he just does it in like a very, very... In fact, the thing about Guardian is he's just like he seems when he plays the game. He never gets animated, never gets energized. He just like, yeah, it's okay. So he just said loads of times, I might quit, or I might just quit CSGO, I might quit Na'Vi. If that's the case, if he's ever available, because you remember they were actually going to put him in this lineup before they got Snax and Bialy. It was one of the lineups they were thinking of. Get Guardian in. There we go. We know he can just speak English and the rest of you can play around him. There's a wicked idea. If it has to be someone Polish, then let me think. Who would be my number 1 pick? I'm going to have to think this through. Because the problem is that Pete guy is like okay, but I don't think he's that great.
No. But I mean, you know, people raised questions when Bialy and Snax came in. And it was almost like having the benefit of having, you know, some of the old guys around them help develop them. You know, I think Hyper was in the fucking mix back then.
Yeah, he was one of the ones that they were considering.
And I definitely wouldn't say to pick up Hyper now. I think he had that one like breakout performance against Titan where everyone went mental, and then he hasn't really done anything that makes me think it's going to be a sustained period.
I mean, the player where I watched him and I think he's like a good player, not great, but a good player, like a skill player, is Sparrow. That guy seemed decent, so he's someone maybe to consider. I admit that I think the talent pool is pretty slim out there. Like, so that's why I say, listen, they're a world-class team. Why not go for someone who's not Polish?
Yeah, I can't believe people are actually spamming the chat saying, "Isn't Shroud part Polish?" It doesn't work like that, boys. It doesn't work like that. When you're an American Polish, you know,
Canadian
descent, Canadian Polish descent. Sorry, you're not just gonna. It's very different cultures again. Like we talked about at the top of the show. I can't believe people honestly think it's just gonna work like that. I'd be fairly confident that Shroud probably doesn't speak a lot of Polish.
Shroud is like a quiet guy who's non-confrontational. He'd get eaten alive in that team.
Yeah, exactly.
He'd get bodied. Listen, if Shroud went to that team, in about 5 minutes, he'd be sat in the corner crying while Bialy was like, "Give me your shoes! Give me your shoes!" He'd be like fucking scared straight or something.
Yeah. So people are strange indeed. So I think that's unless you've got any final points or nations that you'd like to start wars
We've
with.
done a good job this episode.
Yeah, I think we were very mature, and just to make the show incredibly meta at the end, I'm going to show solidarity with Freak by bullying someone.
Okay.
And there's a chap. He always comes into the chat. And we just let him do his thing. He's obviously not very well. He's currently under the username I'm Real Lol, obviously a League of Legends fan. And he sat there for the entirety of this broadcast, spamming all this abuse, about how I don't have any life experience. I could never have held down a real job. I'm fat, I'm a virgin, the usual high level of insults. So I just want to point out to this guy, who obviously has nothing better to do of an evening than to sit here and listen to me talk and hang on my every word just so he can try and insult it and try and get noticed. This shout out that I'm giving you now, this is as good as your life's ever going to get. This is the level of notoriety that you're going to achieve. This is the high watermark. I get to do all the things you don't. I'm going to have a pretty baller 2016. I'm going to pull in a six-figure income, a comfortably six-figure income, and I'm going to go all over the world. It's going to be fucking great. I actually like my life. There's nothing in me that would make me sit in Twitch chat and spam abuse to somebody who is better than you in every way possible. So just ponder on that when you're having your little meditation tonight, your little existential crisis. Just think about that. I win. You lose. So anyway, Duncan, do you have any content coming up?
Yeah, I got quite a lot of stuff. Yeah. I mean, actually, some of the topics we talk about now, I'll probably do videos about. Like MLG one, the qualifier groups, probably do that. Yeah, that's a good one. I might do a topic on Virtus.Pro. Like I might try looking into the actual tournaments and looking at all the bad games they've had online, see if I can figure out some better answers than just the general overview like that, see if I can get somewhere, because obviously if it did turn out they either return in a few months or they do badly, it'd be nice if you had like a reference point to go to. So maybe I'll do something along those lines. Also got some more, one of the things I've been setting up a lot more now is doing like counterpoints episodes, but not ones where it's like ones that I thought up. Like if I notice other people in the community, like I did one today, other people in the community have like something that they're interacting on, then why not just make an episode out of that? That's basically what I've tried to do so far. So if I can, I'm at home, I'll try and do that and do some more episodes of that.
Right, well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And thanks for your constant input into this show, which goes from strength to strength. And long may it continue. So with that said, that is where we're going to end today. We might not have got round to all of the news, but we felt all of this drama was a sufficient topic to take up over an hour of the show. I thought, handled it incredibly well. I'm immensely proud of the level of maturity, because we just could have gone in there and been like, yeah, Brazilians, yeah, obviously, and fucking fREAKAZoiD, more like. We could have done that. We could have come out and been the great entertainers, but instead we thought it was a topic worthy of serious and intellectual discussion. And we hope you agree. Obviously, thanks to Alphadraft for letting us do the show. It was delayed by 24 hours. I had some stuff come up. Oh, people are saying we should talk about Nuke. Have you had time to play it yet? Because I can't, because I've got an AMD.
That's the problem. So we haven't done it yet. So
yeah, well, no, but I mean, I haven't. I've got the AMD card book, so I've tried. Like okay. It crashes. I can't stay on.
We'll do that next week.
Yeah, we'll just do it next week, guys. It'll be there. So anyway, thanks to Alphadraft. If you want to show your support for this show, you go and you sign up to alphadraft.com, create an account. You can do some fantasy betting. You could make a team with all of the greatest bullies in one roster. You could get Freak in there. You could get Simple in there. You could get Taco in there.
I'd probably suggest for fantasy sports not to pick Taco. Just me.
Who knows? And once again, the death threats rain down on Lord Thorin. But anyway, so do support them. They support us. And I guess that ends the show. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks to Sam for producing. Thanks to Duncan for his thoughts. And thanks to me for just being me. And I guess we'll all see you next week. Until then, may all your drafts be alpha. Take care.